are you still not sleeping? Are you having nightmares? Are you having flash? What's going on? And, again, varies by department. Some of them will then also offer up to 4 sessions to come back and continue meeting to see them through that kind of early adjustment phase. And then if they're still struggling at the point at the end, then we can refer them to longer term for treatment. And if everything looks fine, then we say, okay, resume duty or cleared to go back. So that initial meeting afterwards is mandatory, at least for the departments that choose to do it. That's a mandatory. Couple sessions afterwards are not. They're if needed. And then from there, we kind of set the path like all good, clear, or let's carry on and keep working with you until you can recover.
Do you support this idea that it should be controlled locally by each individual police department, or do you think there should be a nationwide mandate, like some sort of a standard operational procedure where they treat everyone the same way, train everyone the same way, deal with every single murder, suicide, child death, and they have like a protocol that they follow, so it's just standard across the country, based on science?
I do. I think many of these things, these fundamental pieces, should be mandatory. I think pre-employment psychological evaluation is an absolute must. And again, most agencies do that piece. I think the critical incident debriefings are an absolute must and should always occur. And they should be mandatory because that takes away the stigma. No cop wants to come see the shrink. They see you coming and they're like, I'm out of here. Like, no, keep the shrink away.
Well, they're probably trying to deal with it their own way.
Yep.
And then somebody that they don't even know who comes in and starts probing and asking questions, and they see some guy in a suit. Yep. Maybe he's never even seen a dead body. And you're like, hey, shut the fuck up, man. I know what I'm doing. Let me just go back out there and go to work.
And the other things that feed into that are, obviously we know law enforcement, just like military, the culture is very, I am in control.
Right.
I got this.
Right.
I don't need your help. I am tough. I am,
And supported by each other.
Yep. And we are each other.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And so that culture doesn't make it inviting to come and talk to a shrink or an outside person. And the other part is, that officers are really fearful of losing their jobs.
Right.
Having their livelihood taken away. That's a huge deal. And depending on the psychologist, if they're seeing somebody who is not familiar with law enforcement culture or who is, real quick to judge and to jump on the, no, we can't have this person out there with a badge and a gun.
Sure.
There's a really delicate line there. You obviously don't want somebody who's unstable to be out there. We want to take care of them and get them healed before they're, but at the same time, this is someone's livelihood. This is their being. This is who they are. And to take that away haphazardly or carelessly or needlessly is really scary. And so they really do need to have that front. So that's why, like the mandatory debriefing is so important, because if it's, we're going to pick you and you and you, the rest of you guys are fine, then they've been singled out and in the spotlight.
It's a subjective judgment call.
Right.
So that's where it gets weird. And I can make a comparison to refereeing in fights. Some referees stop fights where other referees would let the fights go on.
Absolutely.
And it makes people so angry when they stop a fight quickly. If someone comes in and says, this guy's not ready, he can't go back on the force. And the guy's like, what are you talking about? I'm fine.
Right.
And maybe he is fine. And maybe the guy just has a weird sense of people. And like when you have judgment calls like that, like what criteria are they using? Are they using just their own personal opinion? Do they have to fit a set of guidelines? Like when they say this guy's not fit to go back on the street, he's seen too much, he's too shaken up by this murder scene, like how do they make that call?
So it kind of depends on what scenario you're making that decision. So there's 2 different levels that are most likely. So the debriefing is usually, unless the person is completely shaken.
Okay, let's do a scenario. Let's say guy pulls some guy over. The guy reaches for a gun, shoots at the officer shoots the person, kills him. Big investigation, news, the whole deal. The guy's on television. They show the body cam footage. And then this guy has to do an evaluation and then go back to work again. How would one decide whether or not that guy's okay to go back to work?
Probably going to look at multiple factors. Mental state, basic mental state is our starting point.
And how do you do that?
So questions, In the debriefing, we're unlikely to pull into our bag of tests, which, in the other scenarios, big psych evals, we're going to dig into our tests. That's what we do as
When you
psychologists.
say tests, not like fMRIs or anything like
No,
that.
like like MMPI. Let me throw out other letters, like
What
the
is that?
personality tests and tests that show different levels
Okay.
of pathology or clinical issues and problems, anxiety, depression, bodily dysfunction.
Do you
all
do
those
a
things.
physical examination, check their heart rate,
I
blood
wouldn't.
pressure?
As a psychologist, I would not. So
Okay.
what I'm looking at is their mental state and just basically their overall functioning. So are they able to go about their daily activities, and if this is right after the scene, I won't know this yet. If it's right after the scene, I will be going and sitting down, talking with them. If they want to talk about what happened and kind of run through the scenario, we have them do that. That can be very telling if they're comfortable sharing that detail. Are they able to describe it? Are they able to get through it without breaking down? Are they able to talk, sort of clearly, even emotionally is expected and fine. In fact, somebody who has zero emotion after that, I would be like, what's happening? What are you
Right.
feeling? But in that, immediate part after, it's really just looking to see what's going on, what's happening. Are they able to function? Are they able to safely go home? Are they having any thoughts about hurting themselves? Are they, are they feeling like they are, kind of losing their mind? Anything that just is completely out in left field. What we often do is we're going to go on the scene only if the agency wants someone to check in right there. I more often than not see them a day later. Usually it's our rule here is within the first 48 hours. So I'll see them within the first couple days afterwards, and they'll come in. And at that point, they've been able to get through at least one night of sleep. I can see if they're sleeping, if they're eating, if they've spoken to anyone, are they having any major, really strong emotional reactions. And so we're kind of looking to see, what are you feeling? What are you thinking? What's happening, and is it kind of within the realm of what we would expect, and do you need any additional supports right now while you're in this sort of immediate short-term aftermath. The only times that really I'm likely to say you're not ready to go back are the ones that stand out are when, number one, the officer, him or herself, says, I cannot do this right now. I
How many times have you seen that?
It's rare. I mean, maybe 4 times.
In how many years?
Total years, I've been doing this for about 15, but more recently out here in the last few is kind of what I'm thinking of since I've been doing more than, out of a few hundred. So it's not.
And so what is the protocol? Like, how is that handled? Like, say if there's an officer that can't go back, they say, I just can't handle this right now. Maybe they see a horrific child murder or something like that. Like, what do they do to get back on track, and what assistance does the force offer them?
So the odds are that even without, in that scenario, if they've been involved in a shooting, and especially being the shooter, they're likely to be on an admin leave anyway while everything's being reviewed, because the agency side, the investigations and all the procedures and checks are going on. So they're probably not going back out to the street right away anyway while all of that stuff gets cleared. So that's a good thing. They get a few days to get their wits about them while they're, kind of calming down and recovering from that. So, odds are they're not jumping right back out anyway. But what happens in that time, if we say, okay, somebody's just not ready, we usually say, let's check back in a week or 2 weeks, depending on, I usually will discuss it with them and say, you know what, let's meet again in a week. Take the time, and then I'll check back in with the agency.
So they're just on their own?
We need more time here.
When you say time, just leave them alone, let them figure it out themselves?
Yeah, well, let them go. If they want to come in and continue, if it's an urgent matter, the person's feeling like they might hurt themselves, we're going to continue to see and support and do whatever we need to do to take care of that person.
That is a giant issue, too.
Well,
I mean, suicide
absolutely.
amongst police officers is a huge issue.
Huge. Although it's much more likely to happen from somebody who has not recently been seen. The suicides that happen are the ones that are out there. They're still functioning on the job. And we have no idea what's going on because nobody is checking in on that person's mental health.
Okay, so it's not after seeing some horrific incident or being a part of a shooting. It's just the overall stress of the job.
Right. That is one of the biggest problems out there. I feel like we do an okay job having these debriefings right afterwards because we can monitor, we check back in periodically, and we keep touching base until we're feeling, comfortable that the person's good. We also, in those debriefings, get to educate them and say, hey, here are, I give them those flyers and say, look, here's what we know. Here's some good things to do. Here's some bad things to do. Here's what it might feel like. If any of these things are off, here's my information. Call me and come back in.
Is it a real problem with cops just not wanting to help because they're,
the fear.
The fear also, and they're tough guys.
Yes,
a lot of them,
absolutely.
and tough girls. They're like,
tough.
I got it.
I've got this. I mean, the whole job is about being in control.
Yeah.
Every scene you roll up on, you are in control. That command presence is necessary to be an officer. And so to not be in control, it just feels terrible. And I mean, for anybody, for any human, it's hard to make the call to a therapist and say, I need a little help.
Right.
Anybody who's thought, you know what, I'm not doing so well right now. I really feel like I could use picking up that phone and calling to seek help is a big deal. So for
There's
a police
stigma,
officer,
right?
there's a stigma. Do I really need this? It just is hard to pick up. And
you don't want to be the person that wants help all the time. Like, hey, figure it out yourself.
And can this person really help me? Who's this going to be? How do I find a therapist?
There's a lot of factors.
The most frequent question I get from my friends and family and people are, I'm thinking I might need to see someone. Like, how do I go about doing that? Get that question all the time. So for cops, it's even bigger because of that whole control thing.
Yeah.
And also, like I said before, their job is on the line.
Of course. So for these cops that are in that situation, so when they say, look, I need to take some time off, you basically just leave them alone and say, if you want these resources, here they are? Or do they,
Again, it's going to vary by department.
Isn't that kind of crazy that it does vary by department?
Yeah, it drives me nuts.
And has this discussion been had, like, nationwide?
Oh, there's so many good things and pieces of advice and recommendation out there. One of the things that's kind of painful right now is, every morning I get a news recap from the International Association of Chiefs of Police. They send this email out to all the members of there, and they have the psychological services group. And so you get these updates, and I usually just kind of pass them over. But lately with all the police reform, so it's just headlines from around the country. And the piecemeal randomness of this city's doing this, and this city's doing this, and this city's doing this, and and it's all over the place. That's driving me nuts because I'm like, there's already been groups that have studied and reported and told us what we need to do to help the world of policing rise up and do better. That information's out there from wonderful, brilliant people who've come together and have laid it out for us. It's there, but yet we don't have that national standard. Each state has certain, most states have a group. Like in California, it's the California Post. It's the Police Officer Standards and Training. So they set all the rules for minimal training requirements for all the departments in California. So all the agencies, police agencies here in this state are, need to comply with all of the post recommendations. But they're all, it's a minimum standard. And our California Post is kind of heads and tails ahead of most of the country. Some states don't actually have that organization. Most do have something similar to like what we have. So they do set some standards, but there's so many things that are not included in that. And so it is a bit, random. It's hard, I think, to make a one-size-fits-all, everybody must do this, because if you think about it, I think there's about 18,000 different police agencies in the U.S., and I think I read that about 50% of those have 10 or fewer full-time officers. So, when you've got podunk, tiny little town in the middle of, the Midwest in a very rural county that's a whole lot different than LAPD.
Right.
So it's hard to have everybody on the same standard and the same expectations when we've got a lot of different makeups for a lot of different departments. That said, there are some fundamentals that I think every department should be held to. And one of those is the debriefings after an incident. And the one that almost no one is doing, that's been talked about for a while, is regular mental wellness checks. At this point, you get a psych eval when you're hired or before you're hired. And if you're in a critical incident, you may or may not get one. More are starting to do that. And then the only other time you're going to be required to see the psychologist is if you have messed up and you're in trouble and you're referred for a fitness for duty evaluation. And at that point, your job is on the line. Someone is saying that they think you're not fit for duty. And that is a scary evaluation to have to be a part of, because then you're going in and yeah, if the psychologist judges and decides that you are not able to go back out, well, then you're off duty until you can fix whatever that problem may be.
Right. Well, also, just for the public's health and welfare, it's important to do that.
Sure.
I mean, there clearly are a lot of police officers that are unfit for duty. How do we stop what happened in Minneapolis? How do we stop that from happening, or at least mitigate it?
So, I mean, again, I see everything through my lens as a psychologist, as a police psychologist. So I'm sure there are things beyond my realm that also answer this question. But for me, the things that I think we could be doing different that would really make a difference are the regular annual mental wellness checks. From my perspective, when I look at people like, Derek Chauvin, the officer that murdered George Floyd, and we see what happened there, I would be willing to guess, and I don't know him, I've never met him, I don't know much about his career other than what I've read in the news and whatnot. Police officers that get to that place become that.
Right.
They're not that when they're hired.
Right.
To get hired as a cop, you have to go through what often takes a year-long application process where they are digging and poking into every aspect of your background, your life.
Let's be clear, though. That's in some places. In other places, it's pretty easy.
Again, smaller departments that don't have the resources, probably so.
Yeah.
And
I shouldn't say pretty easy in comparison.
In comparison, yeah. But the vast majority of departments have a pretty, have a similar process in that you're going to go through the application. You have to pass a written test. There's going to be a background investigation, which really I think is a hugely powerful key part, that it should be a well-done background investigation. They're talking to people who people from your past, your landlord, your ex-wife, your girlfriend, your boyfriend,
They have
your
the
whoever.
resources to do that for every single candidate?
They do. Now, some agencies take far more care than others.
Right.
The wide variety of people that I see that have passed their backgrounds, some agencies I work for send me the most amazingly clean candidates, and others that are trying to hire a lot less squeaky clean. But they've all gone through, and it is gone through this background. They also do a polygraph. They do social media checks. They make you list all your tattoos, and so they're looking for. And if there is somebody who is just flagrantly racist, has been out there toting white supremacy, like they're gonna see that somewhere in that digging around. So the blatant racist folks are likely weeded out during a good background process. Let's say maybe they're not as openly, because we all know that people know better than to admit to such things most of the time these days, and it could be more subtle. So at that point, what comes next? You've got oral interviews with, police administrators, a polygraph, coming along in there. And once they pass all of that, that's when they come to they get their conditional offer of employment. So they're basically like, as long as you get through these last two steps, you're good to go for the academy. And the last two steps are the medical evaluation and the psych eval. So by the time we get them, they have been heavily vetted, poked around, and looked through in their past, and we get a pretty clean group of people. But then we get to do more digging, and we get to ask questions at this point that they're not able to ask before. So about mental health and background and psychological treatment and history. And so, and then if they get through these evaluations, then they go on to the academy. So for us, that vetting process, that psych eval, is a really important place. And I've had a lot of conversations with other psychologists, in the past few months, like, what are we missing? I taught a workshop a couple months ago for other police psychologists on, some of the things we do in these pre-employments, and had someone say, how do we screen out the cops who kill? And I said, we can't. And that was not a good answer. That we can't. We can't, because we have to, what we're doing here is predicting the future, right? We're saying, how do we know who is going to be that person who does that later? Predicting the future is incredibly hard. Figuring out who may be, subtly racist or biased is also incredibly hard. So That said, we do a whole lot of things. We've got our psychological tests that we give. We ask a lot of crafty questions, and we dig as deep as we can to try to, again, weed out anyone who we think could potentially become that person down the road, who could be a cop who kills, or who, is racist and biased and is treating people improperly. So, that's one big thing that we want to be very cautious and make sure we're doing a good job of screening up front. But I would say, and there's so much more to say about the tests and the screening, but gets really nerdy and detailed. I would say that the officers who end up having the most problems are the ones who, once they get on, are in a department where that is the culture. That is that those types of behaviors are acceptable.
So as a young officer, they learned that. Have you ever seen the documentary The 7-5?
I have not.
It's a great documentary about Michael Dowd, who has been a guest on the podcast, he was a terrible cop, and talks openly about how he was corrupted and how his first day on the force, he witnessed corruption and was told to shut his mouth. And further went on to become a drug dealer and robbing drug dealers, and just it's a crazy documentary. You would enjoy it, particularly from a psychological perspective, because he's talking about it after having served time, just showing the images from the time and telling the stories. It's the culture of each individual department is different, and some are great. There's a great video of Flint, Michigan, where these police officers, after the George Floyd death, they show up for these protests and tell these people protesting, we're going to march with you. Like, we're a part of this community too. Like, we're your friends. Like, we are police officers, but we are not the person who did that thing, and we wouldn't do that thing. And we want to show you that we support you and that we're here to help. That's what really we want. And it's beautiful. Yep. It's so cool to see them all march together and they're hugging. That's what we want, right?
That is. But and I think that one of the biggest things when we, how do we prevent these issues is we need to look at the individual officer level. But
we need to look at the culture.
I think that is very limited, because I think the racist, angry cop who kills has developed that way over time. And I think one of the pieces is the culture in the department. Is this something that's acceptable? Is there corruption in that department? And so certainly better oversight and tracking is a really important thing, that should happen. But the other piece, and the one that I focus more on from my end, is the wellness. Is this somebody who is burning out? Is this somebody who has gone into a dangerous place, psychologically, that they started out and they were fine when we screened them up front. But, over 5 or 10 or 15 years, they've seen so much. And, there's things happen in your brain that change the way you think and see and perceive the world when you do this type of work.
Right.
And when you get to a place where those processes have really taken their toll, and somebody has gone down this kind of dark path, it's hard to come out of that. And the way they react to the world and the individuals that they see on a daily basis is going to be very different than what they look like when they were hired. So if we're not regularly checking in and seeing who might be at risk for going to that dark place, that bitter and angry place, we're not able to catch them before something happens. And that's where, for me, my big platform is regular wellness checks. I'm not the first one to come up with this idea. It's been suggested by task forces and study groups and people who know a whole lot more than I do for a while now. But in reading, there was a wonderful report to Congress that was put out by the COPS, which is Community-Oriented Policing Services. So they sent this 60-page report to Congress March of 2019 and described in detail, all the things that we should be doing to pay attention to officer wellness. One of which was we seem to think that some regular checkups would probably help, but the problem is no one's doing them, and we have literally zero research on, what are they helpful? Can they prevent this? And I believe they are. So my next big thing is to go and explore and do that research so that we can show, hey, this does help. We can, if we're touching base and we're getting people in, then we can catch the problems as they develop and before they become a major problem where someone's interacting with the community and they go awry and do something awful. Let's take care of them along the way and catch the problems before they become behaviors that are problematic.
There seems to be a lot of discussion now about police brutality, but there's not a lot of discussion about the psychological troubles and the difficult path of being a police officer.
Yeah.
And appreciation for the people that have to do that job. All this defunding the police talk scares the shit out of me.
Yeah.
Because I see what's going on right now in New York City, and it's a goddamn shooting gallery. It's crazy. And the reason why is because the police officers have no trust in the mayor. They want to quit. They don't feel like they get any respect. They feel like they have all been lumped in with this one murderous cop from Minneapolis.
Right.
Now they're all bad cops, and there's a license to call them bad cops. Scream terrible things at them when they've done nothing wrong, when they're just there to protect and serve. A lot of them are good people, the vast majority. So when you're seeing this giant uptick in murders in New York City and giant uptick in shootings, and then you still have that dipshit of a mayor calling for the defunding of the police, like, my God. Like, I know so much of the things they say are just political because they just want to appeal to their base.
Yeah.
And there's so many people out there that have this very narrow-minded perspective. They just have blinders on. And their idea, it's like racial justice, social justice, defund the police. It's like this mantra that they have to say with no depth to it. They don't understand the consequences of saying such a thing or implementing such a thing. Now we're seeing a call for police action, because there's a lot of people, a lot of community groups, a lot of people that are community leaders that are in these communities that are just experiencing unprecedented gun violence and crime. And now they're saying, we got to do something about this. So they're trying to reinstate some of these policies that they had pulled before. I am hoping that through this, what we had talked about with training and with funding the police more, instead of defunding the police, train them better, fund them more. You obviously need police. This idea that you don't need police, are criminals just going to go away? Like, is crime going to go away? You know, we have a problem.
Yeah.
We have an enormous number of people, and out of that enormous number of people, there is a certain percentage of them that will victimize other people. They will steal, they will kill, and if they don't get caught, then you develop a culture of crime. And then you develop a thing where you basically have what's going on in Mexico, where the cartels have more power than the police, which is a terrible situation. If you have that in individual locations like in New York City, if all of a sudden these criminal gangs develop more gun power, more support of the community, they have more people than police officers, you've got a giant problem. And the actual peaceful citizens are the ones that are going to be in trouble. And all those people that are out there protesting that think they're immune from it because they're the ones saying defund the police, hey, man, they'll fucking rob you too. They'll shoot you too. Like, you don't understand humans and you don't understand violence. And so this utopian world that they're trying to push, like defund the police, we're going to refund, we're going to put that money into the community and everything's going to be fine. It's not going to be fine. You need to fund the police more. You need to train the police better. We need more oversight. And we need to recognize that this is a time where everybody's got to come together on this. And we got to figure out what's wrong, fix what's wrong, recognize that there's some problems. But you can't blame all cops. And you can't say defund the police, because that's nonsense. That is a silly, like a version of life that it's not real.
Yeah.
You need good cops, better cops. Are you saying we need to get rid of bad cops? Yes, definitely. I think everybody agrees with that. How do you do that? That's where the question starts.
Right.
And training them more. Like this idea that you can't spend 20% of the time training them. Well, if you did spend 20% of the time training them and there was a lot less crime because of it and the interactions with people were much better, wouldn't that just be overall better? Is that an impossible task? I mean, how much money goes into the police department? You telling me you can't add 20% to that and train them more? I bet you can. Yeah. And I bet you could find it financially beneficial. I would see overall, if you could reduce crime that way and reduce the animosity between citizens and the police, wouldn't that be better for everybody?
It would. And I agree with you. I mean, on the defunding thing, you know, I think, and you've had other people say this too, and you know this, I'm not saying anything amazing here, that like it means different things to different people.
Right.
And I wholeheartedly agree. The folks who think defunding means like just get rid of them, like that's silly. What's your plan B? What
They
do you
don't,
do?
I don't think they really mean that.
I don't
I think they're
understand
saying
what
it.
happens next, and I haven't heard anybody articulate, so then what? And again,
There is no then what. That's
those-
why. No one has a then what.
those the emails I get that talk the headlines. I saw one yesterday or the day before that in Minneapolis now there are groups of citizens banding together, armed citizens banding together to patrol the streets for crime. And I thought, oh my God,
Exactly.
oh boy, that's
Yeah.
a shit show waiting to happen. Because then
That's
you're
a
going to
shit show
have
waiting to happen.
community members shooting people, and then they're charged with
They're charged with murder.
It's
Yeah.
just a
Yeah.
horrific thought, and I can't quite imagine like that. So I completely understand the anger and the frustration, because you're right. We don't need bad cops. There's nothing worse than the person you call to protect you and to help you when you're in an emergency doing the wrong thing and doing harm.
Right.
That we don't need or want that. And I wholeheartedly agree that more training and the right type of training and spending that time, because I also think that the training gives you access to see where people are and if
Yes.
they are on a good path or if they are that problematic person.
Oh, you see what
So,
kind of
all
character they
those
have
things,
too if you
right.
test them during this training.
So if we're seeing them on a regular basis and pulling them out and giving them the tools that they need, then absolutely I think that is an exceptional thing to do. That was part of what your podcast with Jocko just
Yeah.
blew me away with, the way he talked about. And the other thing that sort of has gotten lost is this whole idea of the interaction with the community, with community-oriented policing. And it's exactly what Jocko was talking about when he was talking about being overseas, and I think he was talking about Perseus and the order of, you don't just roll up in your tank and cruise through. You stop and you talk and you humanize yourself and you engage with these, with the folks here, and you let them know that you're here to protect and to serve, and you connect with them, and that helps both the community citizens and the soldiers. That's the same thing that we're wanting here at home in this country, that your police are supposed to be your supporters and your resources and the people that you trust and are connected to. And that is what community-oriented policing is. It's not a new idea.
Right.
It's been around for decades. But we somehow still don't have that going on now. It's still, what seems like everything in society is now, it's us versus them. It's the police versus the community, instead of we are a community together and we need to work with each other to keep this place safe and to understand what the biggest problems are, what are the citizens' concerns. And it isn't easy to do. It's not an easy thing to do, but it works.
Yeah. I go to a tactical range where they teach you how to shoot handguns, and the guy who teaches me was telling me you would be stunned at how inept some of these cops are that come here. He goes, they literally barely know how to shoot a gun. And I wouldn't believe him, except I've seen so many cops that are so fat and so sloppy. And I'm like, how are you going to defend yourself? Like, the idea of you serving and protecting, like, dude, if someone throws you on the ground, you're not even getting up. Like, how does that happen? How do they now have standards for, like, being able to shoot a gun, knowing how to handle it properly, being accurate, being consistent with your training, and also physical fitness? Like, that's the job of a police officer, is dealing occasionally with violent criminals. When you have no capacity to defend yourself, how are you able to help people? You're only like, if you're in a situation where something turns physical, if you have no ability to defend yourself physically other than firearms, a situation that could be de-escalated turns into a violent encounter because you have to shoot someone.
So a couple of things that come to mind. So, imagine that. Police officers do get annual firearms training. They do have to pass, in most places, an annual physical fitness test. And you're saying, already
How's that possible?
You're seeing people who are out of shape and overweight and physically not in great condition, and you're seeing people who can't shoot well. But yet those are regular. There are regular firearms trainings, annual firearms trainings, and there
Everywhere?
are regular physical fitness tests.
Everywhere, though?
Most states have a minimum in initial training, and there's so much variety that I'm sure not everywhere, but most departments have annual, service that you in-service training you got to go through and do. And so if we're still seeing that, people who are out of shape, yet they've passed a physical fitness test, and who can't shoot but are imagine their mental health. Imagine what that looks like.
Right.
And there is no annual mental health training, mental health check-in. And I promise you that the job erodes that over time. So just
Oh, yeah.
if the things we can actually see, that the shooting isn't on par and the physical health isn't on par, the one we can't see, what's going on the inside, imagine how messy that might be.
Yeah.
And there's nothing. We have no oversight and no regular check-ins there. So that's one thing that sort of stands out. I was like, but imagine that.
Yeah.
The other thing is firearms training. Obviously, it is super important if you're going to carry a weapon to be able to use it and to use it well. But it's also not something that you're going to encounter on a regular basis on the job. There are officers who go through their entire career without ever pulling a weapon.
Well, that's great.
Right? That is great. And when you do, it should be few and far between, because there are other ways to manage situations. There are, that's lethal force, and then we've got a variety of non-lethal force, whether it's something physical, hand-to-hand kind of thing, or whether it's a taser or baton or whatever else they may be using or having on their tool belt. So there are other options there. So hopefully, that the continuum is set from verbal de-escalation, communication. When that doesn't work and it's still a danger, then there are certain criteria, and obviously officers are taught their continuum of force and what needs to be necessary to move up that level, with deadly force, or lethal force being the highest. So it's so rare that, to me, there's so much else that comes before that if we're doing a good job, that almost is never an issue, because these other tools work better.
Wait a minute. What's almost never an issue? Being able to use a weapon?
Having to shoot someone. Having to get to where you're breaking a strap and you're pulling your weapon and you're firing at someone. That should, that is the last. It doesn't happen on a daily basis.
But isn't that entirely dependent upon where you're at and what kind of situation? I mean, all across the country, there are situations where cops have to pull their guns and have to use them.
There are, but they're not as frequent as
But they're
you think.
happening every day.
Probably somewhere every day, but
Yes,
not every day in every officer's life.
Right. But if it's you,
if it's you,
if
you
you're
need
that
to know.
officer, you got to be ready.
Yes.
Like this idea
Yes.
that that's not important. It should be of critical importance.
Not that it's not important, but that there are so many other things that need to also be in place.
Yes.
Because if these other skills are in place,
Right.
if you are a master, they like to call verbal judo, if you can talk someone down, if you are a master at de-escalation, you are never going to need these other tools. Maybe not never, but you are very rarely going to need any, the less lethal force or the least lethal force.
Yes.
Because you are managing situations. If you suck at these, you need these a lot.
I see what you're saying.
Right? So for me, because I, deal with communication and deal with, de-escalation and how to talk someone down, how to talk to an individual with a mental illness, how to talk to somebody who's a victim or who's been traumatized, how to talk to somebody who's maybe on drugs and not able to, how do we manage those situations with verbal, with interactions, with communication, so that we don't have to go up the chain of command of, of levels of force.
But that seems to me to be an incredible amount of training that must be necessary. And it also has to be constant and consistent.
Absolutely. And that's why when you and Jocko were talking about the training and how much more, I'm like, yes, let me get in on that. Yes.
How much training do they have to do in terms of hand-to-hand combat?
I don't know. I'm not sure how much. And again, I'm sure it depends on what academy they go through. Some academies are 4 months, some are 6, some last longer, and the makeup depends on who's running that academy as to like the breakdown of, how much is in the classroom, how much is physical, how much is tactical. So I'm not sure what the numbers would be on that.
Andrew Yang, presidential candidate, former presidential candidate, he had an awesome idea. He said every person who is in the police force should be a purple belt in jiu-jitsu or higher. And I think that is a really good idea, because at that level, you have a real understanding of how to defend yourself and how to control bodies. Mm-hmm. I saw a video, I've seen quite a few of them, but one of the more pathetic videos I've ever seen was 2 people trying to hold one guy down completely ineptly. The guy gets up, runs, gets into his car, and shoots both of them, and then takes off. And I'm like, Jesus Christ. Went into his car, got a gun. Like, they had no control over this guy, 2 people.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that should never take place.
Yeah.
And this guy wasn't some freak of nature either. It wasn't like they're trying to hold down Herschel Walker or some super athlete. No, it was just a regular guy. Just they sucked. And it's terrible to watch.
Yeah. Well, so, part of the challenge with officers also is that we think of it as this, go, 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 do, adrenaline junkie job, which there are spurts of that. But, a lot of that 12-hour shift is sitting and waiting or patrolling, depending on what you're, where you are and where you're patrolling. It's tedious, and then it's intense or difficult or stressful. And so, it's
so they need to be trained to recognize that that's what's going to happen too.
Yeah.
And to be psychologically prepared that this is part of what it is.
Yeah. I remember the first time I went on a ride along with someone and thinking, this feels so much different than what I thought it would feel like. First of all, everybody stares at you and is looking at you, and you're, like just standing out no matter where you go because you're in, you're in the patrol car, cop car.
Where did you go?
Oh, I've been many times, and my first one was decades ago in North Carolina. I had a police officer for a roommate who took me out for the very first time. And on my first ride along, it was at nighttime, just tedious, boring, a couple of low-level arrests, but just the way people respond and react really just felt so much different than I thought. And then I went out again a while later and saw a dead body and had all sorts of weird experiences on that one. Just the difference from shift to shift to the adrenaline excitement or something scary or overwhelming happens, and then the just tedious and monotonous shift. And there's so much unpredictability and uncontrollability that you do sort of need to be alert and on and ready. And part of that is what does a number on an officer's mental health.
I would imagine also the current state of the way people are treating police officers has got to be devastating.
So much.
It changed in just a few short months. We went from just most people have respect for the police to it seems like it's in fashion to talk shit about cops.
And it comes and goes, right? You see,
but this is about as bad as it's ever gotten, don't you think?
It's bad now. And when I talk to folks and
it's nationwide too, which is what's fucked up.
Yeah, it's not isolated. It's not just an LA thing or a Minneapolis. It has really spread.
Who would have ever thought that one incident would ignite this powder keg the way it did? Because every other incident that we've had in the past, like the Rodney King incident, that just started riots in Los Angeles. It didn't do anything in New York, but this one is across the world. Yeah. I mean, there's riots in London. Yep. I mean, people are going crazy in France because of this.
Yeah. And who knows? I have no idea what it was about this other than it was just so outrageously awful.
Yeah. There's that.
It's so outrageously awful what happened. And to watch that, it was the video. We all got a first-hand look at something hideous.
There's
and scary. So I think the video, you literally saw a man lose his life, and that was traumatizing for anybody who saw it. I'm sure the pandemic and everyone being shut down and restless and all the, effects of that mentally and psychologically on all of us, just sort of the unrest of that combined with the horror of what happened.
There's also the guy who got shot in Georgia.
Right. Ahmaud Arbery with what had happened to him.
Just before that, and then this was like the last straw.
That was just enough. And I agree. I found it, especially in those early weeks, very stressful to be somebody who really loves and supports law enforcement. My whole goal in life is to take care of and protect cops and to help them be good and do a good job. That's my passion. That's what I want to do. But I'm also very opposed to racism. I want to be as anti-racist as I can be too, and to stand on both sides and to say, can I be both of these things, and to work through and say, well, yeah, I really can, because that's not what we want cops to be doing out there.
Yeah, I think
we've got to find a way to not do the us versus them, and to meet both. Good cops, anti-racism. Those are things that can go together.
Yeah, I think everyone can agree that racism is awful, and racism by police is awful.
Yep.
It's psychopaths that scare me.
Yep.
It's not just racist. It's like that guy that shot that man in the hotel in Phoenix. Do you know that story? It made the guy crawl, and the guy's pants were falling off, and he kept like reaching back. He said, "Don't reach back," and then he shot him.
There was a cop that did that. I don't remember the story. Yeah.
Well, the guy had a toy gun, and someone reported him. They were drinking. They were in a hotel room. SWAT team shows up. They tell this guy. This guy tells this guy to get on the ground. The guy gets on the ground. He's crying. He's saying, "Please, I didn't do anything." And then he says, "Crawl towards." He gives him these really fucked up instructions. Like, crawl towards me. The guy's crawling, and his pants are falling down. So he goes to reach back and tries to pick up his pants. So the guy's screaming at him, "I will fucking shoot you." And it's really clear there's nothing in his pants. He's just reaching back because his pants are falling down. And so he says again, "Crawl towards me." And the guy's pants are falling down. He reaches back, and the cop just lights him up while he's on it, face down, no threat, no weapon, no nothing. I mean, it's one of the grossest ones you've ever seen, and it's a white guy doing it to another white guy. I think racism is awful, but psychopaths are what the problem is.
Right.
It's not just racism, it's psychopaths that are racist. Or, I mean, I think that guy had problems that Derek Chauvin, didn't he have problems with white people too? Like, he had a long history of abuse. There was, I think,
certainly wouldn't surprise me.
there was multiple incidents. And this is what's scary to me. It's like, how does a guy stay in the police force when there's multiple incidents of him abusing people? Like, at what point, like, did they just said, well, we never thought he was going to kill somebody. We just thought he was rough, but he was a good cop otherwise. Like, is that how they're looking at it? Like, how does a guy like that get to a place where, you know, when you go back and look at his complaints, and this guy was one of the reasons why Amy Klobuchar was kind of tanked as being a vice presidential possibility, because she was in control back when this guy was doing this, and they connected. They said, like, well, they will connect it to her.
Right. I remember reading that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know that. Obviously, I don't work in Minneapolis. I don't know what was going on in their department, but just from the things I've read and heard, you know, media, which I always take with a grain of salt because you never know what you're getting, is that he'd had multiple prior incidents, multiple prior shootings. I think one was fatal.
Yes.
So these are red flags and markers. Now, does that mean he was definitely, you know, take this prior to this incident? If we didn't know what had happened here, and if I just saw that he'd had prior complaints and prior shootings, that may or may not be enough for me to say, hey, what's going on? And that depends on what were the complaints. You know, citizen complaints happen all the time, right? So just seeing that someone's had a complaint, you know, you could give someone a parking ticket and they think you're an asshole, and so they call up and complain they treated me unfairly. When you look back at, you know, if there's body cam footage or whatever, and it's a perfectly normal stop, but that person's just pissed off because they got a ticket. You know what I mean? So a complaint can be something very substantial and very real and problematic, or it could be one of these that citizens' complaints come all the time.
How do you feel about the other cops that were on the scene, that were there with him?
I can't understand how one wouldn't intervene and say, okay, that's enough. Let's back off now.
Was he the senior officer?
I don't know. It sounded like, because I know they said two of the guys were pretty new on the job. And the other one, the one that you can see kind of standing in front, had also been on the force for a while, but I don't know which of the two had been on longer.
The way the culture is, excuse me, the way the culture is, the two that were new, if they saw him do that, it's not really, is that a thing that they can say? If you're a new guy, you've been on the job for a couple months, and there's a guy who's been on the job for 20 years, and you see him doing something, is it your place? I understand it's your place as a human being.
Right.
But how does the culture work?
It is a paramilitary environment where if someone is your superior, it is very hard to speak out against that person. So that is definitely a problem, and something that, you know, to act out. And the culture in the department would be, if that's somebody who either is a higher rank than you or who's been on longer, you know, especially if they're brand new and that's like their field training officer, you're not going to step in and tell them not to do that.
It kind of has to be
not
that
the way
way.
it's done. Yeah, that's that paramilitary model.
So if you are shit out of luck and your superior officer is a psychopath,
right,
and he's doing something like that,
yeah,
if he doesn't kill that person and there's no complaint, what recourse does that person have? If they go to
the person who is the victim or the other officer?
The other officer that's there, like, what recourse does that officer have? If you're seeing someone abuse someone and you're new on the job, can you go to internal affairs? Like, And if you do, there's a stigma attached to that, correct?
Yeah. There are ways to report fellow officers, yes. But would most people do that? It's a tough call. Yes, it happens, and some people do the right thing. But yeah, there's a cost that comes with that. I think
The
one
code
of
of silence.
yeah.
Yeah.
One of the interesting reforms that lots of folks are talking about and some cities are passing is this requirement for other officers to say something. And this is an interesting one. There's a lot of these piecemeal reforms that kind of make me go, ugh, like, okay, it's fine, but I don't know if that's going to make much change. This one makes me stop and think, and I wonder if maybe it will. Maybe it will. I don't know. I see it could go both ways, where it could be something that's helpful if there's a safe mechanism for people to report. But, you know, in that situation, you know, thinking about the George Floyd situation, you know, if two of those officers had said, hey, you need to back off, and again, still if they're inferior to him, you know,
What
are
happens
the
in
odds?
the culture?
Yeah, what are the odds that he's not going to tell them, you
Right.
know, screw you, like
Right.
I'm superior to you, you back off, and
And then
so I
tell
don't-
everybody else also on the force, and then
Right.
it becomes
and then they're the snitch and they're the, you know,
Mhm.
the weasel and whatever else, and so it's really the idea I think is a great one. Let's put this law in place that you have to report it or to intervene if you see something, but I just wonder how that'll look as it plays out. And you can't have a divide among people that you have to work that closely together and you have to rely on to protect you, you know, to have your
Right.
back.
And body cameras really are only good once something's happened and you have to
Right.
review the body camera.
Right.
It's not like someone's reviewing the body camera every day and going, Mike, you're kind of a cunt. Like the way you treated those people, you fucking asshole. Like,
Right.
why are you so rude? Why are you so mean? Like, this is not good as a police officer.
Yeah. The only thought that folks had, especially when body cams were first becoming the thing and tons of departments were, you know, were starting to use them, was people thought that kind of, you know, big brother's watching feeling.
Yeah.
Well, you know, if we know we're on camera, we're going to be on our best behavior, and that we're going to always do the right thing. And I'm sure there is some,
There's one
some
way to do
element
that.
of that, but
There's one way to do that.
what's that?
You stream it live, all cameras. You have,
That's a lot of footage.
yeah, right.
That's part of the problem in police departments when they start to implement body cam footage. They have to make these big decisions on where do we store this data, how long do we keep it, what all these
YouTube.
massive decisions. So we flood YouTube. If you think
Yeah,
about-
but so, I mean, listen, people are flooding YouTube anyway.
True.
I mean, it sounds crazy, but if you did do that, there would be very little shenanigans.
Yeah.
I mean, that.
But we kind of have that already because cell phones,
No, you don't.
I mean,
No, if
maybe
no
not
one has
every
a
minute.
cell phone and it's just one perpetrator and 3 cops, you don't have anything.
Yeah.
You know, if everyone was streaming all the time, it'd be really hard to get away with a lot of the stuff that people get away with.
It would be, and one of the things I've heard people talk about with body cam footage is having, sort of that oversight committee to regularly review footage. In fact,
But
there was
God, you'd be reviewing 8 hours a day, all day
of
long.
all the officers on there.
Yeah.
It's such a monumental type
Leave
of
it to
thing
the
to get your
people.
head around.
Put it on YouTube.
Sounds scary.
What sounds scary about it?
Just the chaos and mayhem that would ensue from that.
Well,
But-
also accountability.
True.
Both things would ensue from that.
True.
Let's talk. Here's another example that made me sick. It has nothing to do with racism. When they were in, was it upstate New York, where they pushed that old man down and he fell and bounced his head off the ground and was unconscious, and I think he's still in trouble.
Is he?
Yeah, he's still hurt. I mean, look, he's really old.
Yeah.
And he fell and slammed his head off the ground. So they charged the officer for doing that, and then the rest of the officers, they quit. Clearly, you shouldn't push an old man like that. Clearly. And when that guy falls and hits his head, you got to look after him and give him medical attention. The guy was unconscious, bleeding from the back of his head, and he's really old.
Yeah.
Like, if you're that old and you fall down like that, he easily could have died.
Yeah.
And you've got these cops that just walked away while this guy's down like that. Well, what did the guy say that was so bad that they had to push him down? I mean, he's some sort of like radical left-wing activist, and he's been that way his whole life, but he didn't touch anybody. He didn't assault anyone. Like, why did they do that to him? And why did those other cops, why did they retire? Well, they quit because of this same camaraderie, and I understand that you need that. If you go to war together, you have to stay together. You have to stick up for each other. You're a part of a team. I understand that, but you can't do that.
Yeah.
And the whole world saw that.
Yeah. What else can I say?
I
You
don't
can't do
know.
that. You
You
can't do
can't.
that. It's, I mean, I can't. I wasn't there. I haven't talked to those officers. I don't know what happened before. I don't know what happened after. I don't, all I see is, again, these little snippets that come onto the news media. And
You just see a guy push a frail old man.
what you see is something that's awful.
Yeah.
But when you've got these, these police and they're lined up and they're marching, like what's going on and how could that have happened and why? Like, I don't know. I don't have an explanation for that one. I would like to know. I would like to talk to the people. I'd like to see what was happening, why it was in that,
those
that
all
kind of
pile
mindset.
up.
Yeah.
They pile up. All
Yeah.
these videos pile up. All these times where cops abuse people pile up.
Yeah.
It's so unfortunate. And every time a cop fucks up, every other cop has to deal with the pain of that.
Yeah.
They have to deal with the stigma, and they have to deal with the anger and the backlash.
It's definitely one of the hardest aspects of the job is that, you're given an immense amount of power.
Yeah.
That badge and that gun just are tremendous in terms of what they give you liberty to do. And like all humans, power can corrupt. Nothing corrupts more than money and power, right? Well,
Right.
cops don't have money, but they've got the power.
Yeah.
And they, it is so easy to let that, to go the wrong way. And
Yeah.
so, and like I said, I don't think that that the folks that you see in these videos started out as bad people.
Right.
I don't think I mean, I spend so many days of my life evaluating these folks who want to go into this very noble profession. And the majority of them are just really great people. Occasionally you get an idiot that comes through, and usually they fail because they don't belong on the force. And that person, no thank you.
My fear is that more idiots are going to get in now because less people want to be police.
Well,
so it's going to be even worse.
It's doubly scary now. The defunding thing obviously is a huge issue. Like, what's going to happen? Agencies are not going to be able to hire because the money's being taken away.
It's a political thing as well. It's like
totally
when
political.
they say we're going to defund the police, all the
Right.
progressive people go, yes.
Yeah.
I want to be unsafe. Yes.
But the combination of the defunding as well as the tanking economy, some of the departments that I work for, the money that comes into that city or that town to support the department, that we're
Right.
all
It's
the
all going
financial
away.
crisis that's going on from the pandemic. So I've a few of the agencies that I work for are like, yeah, we don't anticipate hiring in maybe the next 2 to 3 years. So, and that's partly, and some, it's not a defunding thing issue. It's the financial crisis from the pandemic.
Right.
That there's things that are.
There's cuts across the board.
Yeah,
And they can also use that as a political ploy. Like, say we're defunding the police as well, but really they're cutting education. They're cutting
right.
all sorts of services.
So we're all suffering right now because of the financial crisis that's going on from this COVID crap. But in addition, then you've got that plus the COVID stuff. And I mean, you've got departments who are going to be really strapped for, being able to hire. And then, like you said, who wants to go into this job now? In fact, when I do these, I'm still doing some evaluations right now. And the question that I start off is, why do you want to do this?
Right.
Given the current climate, what makes you want to be an officer? Just to hear what their thoughts are, and to sort of get into their mind a little bit on what is it that makes you want to do this? Because really, you got to be second guessing your options here at this point, because it's not an easy time to be a cop.
What if I gave you a magic wand and or the president did, and the president said, look, Nancy, we got a real problem. We want you to help.
Yeah.
And we'll let you structure the program for the entire country for the police officers.
Yep.
What do you think should be done? Cost no option.
I love that you asked that question. In therapy world, therapists, we ask that question for our clients all the time. We call it the miracle question.
Oh.
Therapist trick you just did right there. And you do it to a lot of your guests. I like it.
I don't even know.
Total therapist trick that we do.
I didn't know.
Yeah. In your life, if things could be perfect, what would it look like? So look at you.
Okay.
So yeah, if I could
I'm a
have
therapist.
you are. You didn't even know. if I could just take over and make all the changes. Honestly, I would take the advice of the amazing people who have done a ton of work already. About 5 years ago, there was a task force put together to, recommendations for what should 21st century policing look like. And they lay out in a, 170-page document what policing should look like. And this really amazingly brilliant group of people came up with some excellent advice. And it talks about racism, and it talks about technology, and it talks about community-oriented policing, and it talks about wellness and all the things that I see that are missing. It's been sitting there for 5 years. And not to say that nothing has happened since then, but we certainly haven't enacted what that task force put together. And what they recommended back then. Take that and all the other great work, change and reform. Right now you see it happening left and right all over the place, right? It's piecemeal, it's haphazard, it's political, it's let's satisfy the unhappy folks right now. And I agree that people are demanding change and they need action. They want to see it right now.
Mm-hmm.
I get that. It's satisfying to say, yes, there's change. But I'm also really concerned about whether some of these random haphazard changes are going to make any difference for these real problems. But yet we've had these brilliant groups that have laid out what we need to do. That report to Congress from back in March of 2009 on officer wellness. What I would do if I got the magic wand and all the money is again, psychologist lens for me, is I would sit down with that, and there were 22 recommendations in that report, and I would work my way through making these recommendations become mandates across the board.
And this is a big battleship that's going to take a long time to turn.
Absolutely.
So
these are not easy problems. If they were, we would fix them, right? We would
even with an unlimited budget.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
They are not easy. They are not simple. So many of these societal problems, they're so important and they're so profound. But like I always say, my husband and I will argue politics because we see things from other sides of the fence, and I'll be like, if
which one's the liberal?
I'm the do-gooder, soft-hearted. He's more conservative. He's a business guy. I'm the psychologist. It all makes sense if you know us. But, we'll debate and go back and forth, and we get mad at each other, and it's we butt heads, and he thinks I'm an idiot. I think he's an idiot, and we roll our eyes, and then, I stop and think and reflect on it and think, if these problems were simple, with all the brilliant people in the world, we would have solved them already. We would have solved them. We have to be able to see things from the perspective of others. While I might get mad when he sees things differently from me, it also makes me stop and think. Because you know what? In this case, here's someone who I love who's saying the things that maybe I don't love. And so I have to stop and think, maybe there's something to this. I could just be, oh, you're horrible because you see these things, and you think I'm horrible because I see things this way. But you know what? We both have a perspective, and they probably both have value.
What you described as Twitter. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of very good people that are conservative. They're decent people. And there's a lot of very good people that are liberal.
Absolutely.
It's there's a lot of problems in this world, and there's not clear-cut solutions. And the problem of law enforcement, to me, is akin to the problem of education, in that there's not a lot of money in it, but it's an incredibly important part of the world, incredibly important part of our society.
Yeah.
But yet the people that do it don't get paid well.
Right.
Some police officers can make a really good living if they do a lot of overtime.
Right.
That is true. But also, you got to think about what are you talking about? You're talking about someone literally giving up 80 hours a week of their life to make that kind of money.
Officer wellness, that's one of the things I recommend against.
Is overtime.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think you're right about that. It's very tempting financially.
The more, I honestly, the best description of what happens mentally, how the mental state of an officer kind of can get off track over time, was written in a book. It's older now. I think it was early 2000s. A guy named Kevin Gilmartin wrote a book called it's like Emotional Survival for Law Enforcement Officers and Their Families. That's probably not exactly right, but that's close. Best book I've ever read on police mental health, and he describes in such an easily digestible way what happens with police officers and their mental state, right? He talks about, normal humans, we live between the lines. Like, this is a normal state of alertness and functioning. So we all are kind of in here. When you're on the job and as a police officer, you've got to live in this state of hypervigilance. Like, you're on, you're alert, you're looking around, you're always ready and, sort of energized, a little bit of adrenaline flowing. And so they have to live up there. And that's our bodies are meant to do that for short term. That's our nervous system, parasympathetic nervous system kicks in, we're up, we're alert. And you stay up there. And then when they come off the job, it dips down. But instead of going back into that like middle zone, the normal zone where most of us are functioning, kind of going about normal level of energy, they dip down below, because once you've been on that high, kind of that rush while you've been on the job, your body needs to recover. So it goes down into this low state. And while it's down there, again, this is your nervous system's kicking back in, you're recovering, you're out of that beast mode, and you don't feel great, you're tired, you kind of want to be alone, you want to get isolated, detached, and a lot of cops kind of go and retreat when they get home and they need that go to my cave time.
Mm-hmm.
Your body can recover from this. So the cycle for cops is that they're up, and then when they come home, they go down. And it usually takes the body 18 to 24 hours to get back into the normal zone. Great. So if we did that one day and then we dip down and recover, we come back. But what happens within 24 hours? Well, you go back to work again. So what happens for cops is they're up, then they're low, then they're way up, then they're low. And that's not the way our bodies were made to function. You're in this state of hypervigilance for so long, it starts to wear on you. It wears on you physically. It wears on you mentally, it wears on you emotionally, and you never get that recovery time to get back to a normal state. So they constantly are in this like
shorter and shorter fuse.
Yeah, tense and alert, and it sort of just wears on you over time. The other thing it does that, cops are notorious for having kind of trouble functioning at home if they're working too much and they're so into it, that on tense state feels good. You're energized, you're alert, you're active. And then when you dip down, you don't feel good. So they start associating home with negative feelings and work with positive feelings.
Oh, wow.
And so then what do? They crave work more. So they go take overtime shifts and they hang out with other police officers and they start to kind of become their police self and they lose their personal self. And so this is, I love Gil Martin's book for this, and I've recommended it to any officer that I've come across if they haven't read it, because it really beautifully explains this cycle and kind of what it does over time. And he also goes on to recommend, well, how do you, and what the long and short of it is, at the end, if you stay in that and you lose too much of your personal self, you become that burned out, bitter, angry, gonna snap and, and make a bad decision kind of place. So how do you resolve that? You've got to protect your personal self. You've got to keep from getting hard and bitter and becoming too much of that police self. And so one of the things is you protect your off time and you use it. You engage, you do the things you love. You don't give up your hobbies. If you have a family and kids, you do things with your children. You have to get back into the real world. So you remember that the real world is out there. Because if you are only in that state where all you're seeing is the things that cops see, which is negativity and stress and horror and trauma and angry people and hurt people and victimized people, if that's all you're seeing and you're spending all your life in that state, you forget what happens on the outside. I think it's really hard to understand from the outside looking in. I've told millions of people this story, that I got a little bit of a taste of it from my years before I went into the academic route, and I was working in the prisons and forensic hospitals. And so here's maximum security setting, being a young, small female in a maximum security setting, I'm surrounded by offenders who are mentally ill. It's not an easy gig, and you got to really you got to be in that state of hypervigilance. And so after a few years of that, I didn't notice it was having any effect on me until I was working at a federal prison at the time, and one of my college roommates came to visit me, and we were hanging out and having a drink or whatever and joking, and after a while she was like, "Hey, Nance," and I was like, "Yeah." She's like, "You're different." I was like, "What are you talking about? I'm not different. What? Like, no, I'm not." She's like, "You're really hard. I'm a little bit scared of you," and I was like, "What do you mean?" And she's like, "You're just kind of hard." Like, and I thought, no, like she's when she said that, it really kind of struck me. And like 2 weeks after that, I went to visit my sister. And at the time, she had young kids. And I remember sitting outside watching somebody playing a ball game and looking at all these families. And I remember having the thought, like, what are they doing? Why are they all so happy? Don't they know of what all that's going on? Don't they know about all the horrible people aren't they scared to be? And I thought, oh my gosh, she was right. Like my brain has started to go into a place where, because every day I had to steel up, get tough, be ready for anything, have eyes in the back of my head, because I was working in a really dangerous setting at that time. And I had to protect myself. And when I flashed, after that, I stopped working in the prisons and I softened back up and came back to like a normal state of functioning where I can turn it on or off depending on if I need to. But it really was telling to me to see how much your daily persona can shift when that's your day-to-day functioning. So that Gil Martin stuff with the waves and the hypervigilance and the recovery, and the more people start to become their police self more and more and lose their personal self, it's a really important thing for officers to be aware of and to track and to monitor if they want to stay balanced. The best of the cops that I know, and I know a lot of really good ones, but I think of a few that stand out who I just simply adore as humans and are really wonderful officers. They have that balance really down. When they're on, they're on. But then when they're off, they're doing stuff with their families. They're coaching their kids' ball teams. They're, active physically. They're fit. They're mentally, sharp. They have a real personal life that they hang on to that balances out what they see and the negativity that comes at them constantly in their day job. That's just not something that most of us have to deal with in our daily lives. And it's a really big deal. And that's, those mental health checks that I push so hard for and that I really want to get going and to study and figure out how can we do these well, can check in on that stuff and to help stop that cycle, help to get people into a healthier place so that they don't become bitter and jaded and angry and more likely to be the bad apple, as we like to say.
Yeah, the description of that cycle is so important for people to recognize that, even though some human beings might be better at managing things, it's like there's an actual physical thing that's going on.
There is. And when I meet with cops after an incident or, if they're coming in, that's the first place I go because it feels so comforting to know this isn't me being weak or me losing it. This is something physiological that's going on,
Don't you think that a lot of these cops are tempted to do overtime just because the money's so great?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that's one of the perks of the job. That's one of the things they love, that they can, hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. They could literally double their pay.
And it's great to have that option, but again, at what cost? To have a balance. Some overtime is fine, but if that's all you're doing.
Right.
And if you're doing it, this is probably a really important key, if you're doing it to avoid being at home, because being on the job is the only place you feel functional and alive and good, that's where the danger sets in. If you're doing it because you're trying to make extra money to get that, to take your family on a trip, summer vacation or whatever, absolutely, do it, get that extra money because that's great. But if you're doing it because that's the only place you feel alive and on and alert,
you might be in trouble.
Yeah, you might be getting a little bit off, and that's going to lead probably to a place that's not great.
So I'm going to bring you back to this again. If you got this magic wand,
and
the president says, Nancy, take over, what are you going to do? What's the first thing you're going to do?
I'm going to pull all of those things, all the work that has already been done, and I'm going to implement reform. I'm going to tell all those angry political folks that are fighting with each other to hush, to stop fighting, that we've got really smart people who've already given it, and I'm going to put in place nationwide procedures for how we hire, how we make decisions, and particularly, of course, psych evals. I'm going to implement nationwide requirements for screening and mental health and well-being. I'm gonna get Jocko on board next to me to develop training programs, right?
Now you're talking.
I'm gonna team up with him, and we're gonna recreate the world of training together, and we're gonna do the more training, all the stuff that we need, and to get people who are actually healthy, well, physically fit as well as emotionally and mentally healthy, and well equipped to do their job, and not just on the tactical side, but on the communication side, de-escalation, communication, how to talk to people who are victims, what to do, all those things in a training package, so that the academies, they do a good job. I don't want, to make think that they don't, but that police academies tend to do things in the same way like that the courts do. They rely on precedent. They do what's always been done because that's what we know and that's what works. And to have a joint planning of training where it's not just this is what we do, so this is what we'll keep doing, but to pull in the academic piece as well and to say, hey, yeah, but we've been doing all this research and there's actually a better way, so let's implement this now. And so just to really update and refresh what that academy training and the ongoing throughout your career training looks like. So reforms, training, on the job, take care of our officers, and to put in place all of these recommendations, these specific level recommendations on, how do we actually get in there and take care of folks. There's so much that we can do that could make a big difference.
And there's got to be something done to push back against this idea that we have right now, weaponize this idea of defunding the police, that the police are evil. That the police having money is the problem. And it's crazy. Like, there's a reason why we have the police, folks. They're necessary. It's very important. And to abandon them or to treat them like anything other than members of our community, and very important members of our community, is so short-sighted and so crazy, and done by people that I don't think understand psychology. I don't think they understand violence. I don't think they understand crime.
Yeah.
And it's weaponized. It's this thing that they're using now to push a political agenda, to align themselves with people, so that it helps them get reelected. It helps them gain power with their constituents. It's so dangerous, and it's such a weird thing to hear coming out of mainstream politicians' mouths, that we need to defund the police. I'm like, you guys are crazy.
Yeah. I mean, when people talk about defunding along the lines of take some of that money and put it into communities, like, that piece of it could be, if done well, beneficial.
But why take it from the cops?
I don't know that it needs to necessarily take from the cops, but to really pay more attention to our communities and what they're needing. The police over the last 5 decades have had to take on more and more and more jobs within the community. A lot of people would say that the key change came in the 60s when deinstitutionalization happened from the mental hospital. So it used to be if someone was mentally ill, they went to the hospital and they basically stayed there, right? 60s came, deinstitutionalization, all those folks, let's put them out in the community so they can return to their homes.
I think it was a lot of it during the Reagan administration.
Right, let's put money into community mental health. That didn't happen the way it was supposed to. So the community mental health never got funded properly. And then all those folks who had mental illness did not get proper treatment, went off meds, all sorts of
Crime
problems.
rises.
And now who has to deal with it?
Chickens
Police
have come home to
officers,
roost.
right? So they became mental health clinicians, social workers, domestic violence, all of that stuff. So, right, if defunding the police means putting money into social services and helping these folks in a way that makes it so that the police officers don't have to do those jobs anymore, I'm all right with that. And I think most of the cops are, because I've spent half my career on this side of police psychology stuff, training folks how to talk to people with mental illness so they don't end up shooting them. Right?
Yeah,
so
I think there certainly should be cops that are designated to deal with those specific type of situations.
People have found amazing ways around it to work on it. We've developed what we call crisis intervention teams. This came out of the 80s in Memphis, that, this CIT thing where we have cops and clinicians that go out together. But I don't know any clinician that wants to do that by themselves. So if you defund the police and everyone says, if it's a domestic violence call, send a therapist out.
Jesus Christ.
Well, I know because I work with cops that domestic violence calls are one of the most likely to end in violence.
Yes.
I'm not going there.
Right. And
I might go there if there's an armed person with me, and I'll try to, to do, but like as a team, but you're going to send me into a potentially violent, dangerous situation where you've got two
Again,
people going.
it's a utopian perspective on a very complicated problem.
Yeah, exactly. It's a simple, well, we don't like what we have, so let's get rid of it.
Yeah.
And it's far too simplistic.
Well, and you've got the evidence right now. I mean, this is a short-term study in New York City.
Yeah.
You know?
And I mean,
and Minneapolis as well.
Yep. Folks that I know in New York, some of that training program I talked about earlier, the cops that worked on that who decided, you know what, retirement is the right thing for me right now.
Yeah.
And who've left the force because they just were like, I can't do this. This is the lack of support and what's going on is just too much. It's not worth staying anymore. And
it's so dangerous.
Yeah, it's very unsettling and overwhelming and to see how rather than, trying to come in and figure out how to improve what we've got, it's like it just doesn't make sense to throw our hands up and say, okay, get rid of it, because what's the plan B?
Again, it's a politicized perspective.
It is. But isn't everything right now?
Yes, everything
COVID's
is right
politicized.
Now. Yes.
Police is politicized.
Medication is politicized.
Medication's politicized.
Hydrochloroquine. If you say, I have a friend who got COVID, and when he went to the doctor tested him, found out he had COVID, and said, I don't know what your political leanings are. And he was like, what? And he's like, well, hydrochloroquine
That's terrifying.
Tends to work really well in the early stages of the disease to keep the virus from multiplying. And so he recommended hydrochloroquine and zinc. And he's like, I don't know what your political leanings are. He goes, like, my political leanings? He goes, I just don't want to be sick.
Exactly.
He goes, the fuck do I do, man? Don't tell me that. I mean, there was a recent study that was published in an article in Newsweek from an epidemiologist that was saying the exact same, that we have something to treat it. And because of the fact that Trump recommends it, it becomes this politicized medication that people are avoiding. This doctor told me people were saying, I don't want to take that medication because I hate Trump. It's like, oh my God.
That's when you know we've gotten to a really messed up
place.
Oh,
we're so crazy.
That a pandemic is politicized, and that whether or not that a physician would ask you what your political leanings are to prescribe you something. That is a place that I just can't wrap my head around as to how we've ended up here.
Well, too many of our ideas are being discussed in social media form where there's no one-on-one interaction with human beings.
Yeah.
No compassion. It's no recognizing that the other person's an actual human.
When you ask that dream magic wand question, my I gave kind of my practical answer. I would take these recommendations and do all of these community policing wellness. But my dream answer, in my fantasy world, where I'm an all-powerful being, I would.
What do you dress like? Do you have a Wonder Woman type costume in this?
I'm kind of thinking something like,
an angel?
No, it's darker than that.
Like Batman.
Yeah, it's sort of like Batman, Catwoman, something in that. Yeah,
okay.
I'm thinking in that. That's probably more up my alley than like Angel and Halo. I don't think I could pull that Halo off.
So you have this all power.
So in my fantasy world where I have all power and I spend all of my existence bringing people from opposing sides together and making them sit like we are now, looking at each other as humans, and to say, let's find a way to connect. It's taking cops and community members and pulling them in the same room and say, hey, let's find our common ground. Let's voice our sides. Let's hear each other out, and let's recognize that we aren't us and them. We're humans.
Yeah.
We are people. We are victims of our circumstance. We're victims of ourselves, of our histories. But we also can come together and see that really, when it comes down to it, we are all human beings, and we all want to do well and be well.
Mm-hmm.
Some people go about it in different ways. Do we have to agree on anything? No. But can we at least find that place where we look for the common ground? And in the case with the police and communities, I feel like it actually is a doable and feasible thing. One of those other things. What would happen if we did that? What would happen if I went around pulling people in and breaking down that us versus them? We could do it, cops and communities, Republicans and Democrats, and we are all humans when it comes down to it.
And we have to recognize that the people that are opposed to that are the real problem. The people that are opposed to that kind of communication, and the people that are essentially cemented in their polarization.
They're just looking for a fight, and they're not looking for a solution.
They're a real problem.
It is, and I feel like that is, as a society, we've just gotten to a seriously scary point
Yes.
with that us versus them perspective.
Mhm.
And I hate that
Yeah,
more than anything. So
It's weaponized.
yeah, if I could have my magic wand, that's where it would be. It would be to just start healing and putting people together and finding common ground and pulling us back together as a society.
Yeah. No political speeches either.
Right? Oh no.
Can't do that. That's
No.
a dumb way to talk.
Yeah.
You got a whole group of things here.
This is the academic nerd in me. Like as
What
I
did
was
you-
planning, I mean, we've talked about a lot of the things on there.
Is there anything we didn't cover that you think is important that people need to recognize?
You know, the only thing, like from my perspective, that comes up that I think about is, you know, when we're looking for who becomes a police officer, you know, we as psychologists, we're really important gatekeepers because we kind of give the final seal of approval before someone gets hired. And there's been some really interesting discussions about what should we look for, and you know, in today's culture and you know, with all the issues going on now, you know, can we screen out bias and racism? And I mentioned it a little bit before that, you know, doing so is a really challenging thing. We probably will never be able to do it to the degree that people want us to. And there's been a lot of talk about implicit bias. Have you had anybody come on and talk about that kind of stuff? You know, that the idea that we all have these kind of subconscious or unconscious biases. They're just below awareness. They're just kind of things that we all react in ways, some more dramatic than others, but that we are made as humans that we have these implicit biases. And so a lot of folks have talked about, well, can't we screen for implicit bias in officers and you know, not hire the people who have that? And I thought, well, no, because the problem is we all have them. There's an online test that millions of people have taken. It's connected with Harvard. It's the implicit association test. It's online. Anybody can go take it, and it's really fascinating. You can choose what groups you want to see if you have bias towards, you know, different races. There's a black-white one. You can do the fat skinny one. You can see if you have biases towards you know, different sexual orientation. So you choose which bias you want to investigate. You take this test, and basically it's saying the whole premise is if you have these associations, you know, if you have a bias like against black folks, then what they do during the test is they flash up like a picture of white and black people and then positive and negative words, and you have to respond according to instructions for keystrokes. And the notion is if you associate, you know, if you have a negative bias towards black folks, you're going to associate the black faces with the negative words. You're going to respond faster.
Oh, that seems so crazy.
This test has been around forever.
But is that real? I mean,
Well,
that has to be really criticized.
So what's funny is that
Isn't
it is if you're a testing person. So in my day job, I'm a bit of a testing
But the
geek.
thing is, it's not life.
It's not. And that's exactly kind of the point that I thought was important to make, is you hear a lot about this and people are like, well, give that. I'm like, well, there's some major problems. First of all, from testing standards, you can take it twice and you're probably going to score differently.
Well, here's
so
the
that's
problem.
a problem.
You could juke that system. You could like go, oh, I know what they want me to do. They want.
So
What if you were an actual racist and you took that, but you knew they were looking for racist? You would pretend.
So the theory behind the test is that it supersedes that because
How?
it's instant and it's fast. It's how quickly you respond.
Yeah, but you know what you're doing.
And so the theory is that because these are below the surface, that it gets around trying to manipulate it. That's the idea. I'm not advocating and saying it's perfect, but those who support it would say it's a big deal. What
Okay.
scares me is that people have wanted to use that in screening, and we can't because, number one, it's implicit. We all have these biases.
Right.
Number two, just having it does not predict whether or not you would ever act on a bias, right?
Right.
So there's no good research that shows that having implicit bias is meaning you will act in a racist way, right? So there's not a connection there. So that's the second problem. But what stands out to me is there's people who are like now doing these implicit bias trainings, and they're doing it for officers. And I'm not saying this is a bad thing or knocking it. There's some research that supports and shows that if we want to, and if we are actively engaging and trying, that we can change our implicit bias. Like we can, once we become aware of it, we can do things to counter it and to change it and decrease it. And that's a great notion. But they're trying really hard to implement this into the world of police work because it's kind of one of the only things going, right? And for me, I'm not as on this bandwagon yet. I need to see a whole lot more evidence that this works, because while I have seen research that shows it's possible to change your implicit bias, I have not seen anything that directly applies to police work. And again, it may still be
Or
out there.
detecting
Maybe
it.
I haven't come across the studies, or I haven't seen it yet. There's some stuff out there, but the problem that I see that makes me most nervous about it, or reluctant to kind of jump on board here, is that it takes a lot of effort. It takes, desire and practice and effort, and to make those kind of changes. And I just, if you've probably never worked for a company where you've been required to go to a diversity training. I've been to probably a dozen at this point over the course of my career.
How fun are they?
Horrible. 90% of them are horrible. I've been to maybe 2 that were amazing.
What's horrible about it?
They're canned. They're a lot of them just don't give much information that's helpful. And
When you
it's
say
more
canned,
like
what do you mean?
it's exactly what you would expect in a diversity. This group is this, and this group is that, and if you feel this way, you're wrong, and if you do this, you're wrong, and it just sort of makes you leave feeling like a horrible person. And
But can you be specific? Like
Trying to
what
think
kind
of
of
a good
questions are they asking you?
oh gosh, I think of a good specific example. It's been a while since I've had to go to any of them, and the most recent one I went to actually was pretty fantastic. It's more like, here's what white people are like. Here's what Black people are like, and they're based on these overgeneralizations and stereotypes. And maybe I've just gone to a lot of bad trainings in the agencies that I've worked for, and they haven't been put on. But they just seem, canned
So
in that they're
using implicit bias to describe white people and Black people, because that sounds biased.
not so
Or it
much
sounds
implicit
very
bias, but more
generalization.
generalization and
But isn't that
stereotype
bias?
kind of. It can be. I think it's just they try to, or at least a lot of the groups that have put them on, try to make it very broad so it'll fit a wide audience that they deliver it to, but it becomes so broad that it just feels like this isn't very helpful.
So it seems
this
like
isn't
something
useful.
that they have to do to show they're doing something.
Right. And so I think a lot of those, and police departments are being required to do diversity training. And so whenever I hear it, I kind of cringe, just having been to some really bad ones, and think, well, gosh, who's doing that? And is it doing more harm than good? Diversity training is a wonderful thing when done well. I just think.
How is it done well?
When I think of the ones that I've been to that were done well, they explained, the process of sort of exploring one's thoughts and feelings. It was not so much accusatory, but, here are some of the things that folks who are really interested can do. And, you can, and here are some people who are doing good work, and they, show different news stories of people who are, who have gone from, being somebody who maybe had problems before with, having, bias or even overt racist acts, and that they've learned some things and made changes. And so you kind of see someone's progress, and they talk about theory behind how people come to identify, with, their cultural background and self. And, we've all got some makeup there, and what those sort of stages look like, and, much deeper and moving far away from the just generalizations and stereotyping in this group and that group, and
I just
and
feel like
all that. It's
trying to
just
fix that in
so-
a seminar or it just seems so silly.
Yeah, it's hard. And if somebody really does want to dig deep and explore, and to move forward in terms of exploring and becoming aware of, it's deep work. It's hard work. It's something that I think you really have to want to do, and that's, sitting in a seminar room for 2 hours and being talked at usually isn't that effective.
Yeah.
So they're hard things. It's a really, really important topic, and I think we got a long way to go. And in terms of like screening and whatnot, like I do, we're in a tough place because, we don't have any tests that detect bias. And to create one, it's almost an impossible thing because these are things that tend to be, more subtle and less overt and hard to directly measure in the way we do in psychology.
What else you got in that paper that we didn't go over already?
No. We talked about a lot of stuff.
Because I would imagine something like this, like it's a weird opportunity, right? Like you have to think, like, what are we going to talk about and how's it going to go? Is there anything that we covered that we maybe didn't cover correctly or weird or?
I'm trying to. I don't know. What have we talked about? It's all such a blur sitting here in this seat in this microphone. You do this every day. I don't.
Is it weird?
Yeah, it is weird.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Weird to hear your own voice in your ears?
Totally weird to hear my own voice in my ears. I'm used to hearing my own voice, but more like, in a classroom with students who are hiding behind laptops falling asleep while I talk at them. But, talking into a microphone with heads on and that or a headset on and knowing lots of voices are listening,
I think the most important thing that we talked about, other than the nonsense of defunding the police, is this psychological aspect of the pressure and the high stress, and then the amount of downtime that a human being requires to sort of come back to normal, and that these cops really never get that.
Yeah, I feel like that is one of the most important things I wanted to share and get out there. So, if there are cops out there listening and they're like, oh wow, I felt that, or I'm there, like, go get that book and read it. There's so much good advice in there. And most departments, if they're larger size departments, they have more resources obviously than smaller departments, but there's a lot of resources out there for folks who feel like they need support. My biggest concern, I think, right now is that in this negative climate and this anti-cop moment that we're in, is that there are a lot of cops that were maybe under stress before, maybe in a not so great place for whatever reason, just the job's wearing on them, or they've been in a major incident and they're still recovering from that. And then combine that with just this pervasive anti-cop and all of that really could push people into a dark place. And we know, police suicide has been a major problem. It's gone up in the past few years.
What is the rate?
So the rate, well, in terms of like percentages, it's almost impossible to give a good number because it depends on what your comparison group is. I know in 2018, I think there were known about 172 suicides, and then in 2019 it was up to like 228. And I'm scared to know what 2020 might look like given all the other hardships of the world.
Well, just suicide in general is way up right now.
Suicide in general is high, so I can only imagine. And there's a little bit of argument, depending on what stats you look at, as to how much higher it is in the police profession compared to the community. So different, people can make stats say a lot of different things. It's generally been accepted that it's a good bit higher for police. It's one of the professions that has the highest suicide rate. So like one of the numbers quoted out there, like for the general population, it's about 12 or 13 per 100,000 people would commit suicide. And for police officers, it's more like 17 or 18 people out of 100,000. So, we see differences in the rates. And again, all that stuff we talked about before feeds into that tough culture, not going to ask for help. And one of, I think, the most interesting and frustrating for me is that of the other psychologists I've talked to that have worked with agencies, and I'm like, how do we get in there and break down that barrier? How do I get them to come to me and when they need help so that we can prevent the suicides?
And how can you help them once they do come to you?
So if I can get them to me, I can, I can't be all knowing and all perfect. If we can get them to a psychologist, we can help them.
You think so?
In most cases. For suicide, yeah, because there's always hope. Suicide is when you've just lost the hope and you feel like that pain is never going to end and you see no way out. And we can help with that if we know it's there and we know what to look for. I feel very confident that when you get a good therapist and you get someone in with a good therapist, we can help. but it's when they don't reach out. And that is the biggest problem with officers, is that they will suffer in silence and they will go every other which way. It turns into depression, or they have PTSD, or they're using substances to cope with the difficulties, and, you know, all the other things that compound on there. That what's the best way to get them into the office so we can help them? And a great line, and now I'm going to blank, and I'm so sorry for whoever it was I'm stealing this from, but another psychologist said what she's like, you got to be like the furniture. And I'm like, what does that mean? She's like, in the department, you got to be like a coat rack or a chair. Like, they're so used to seeing you there. It's like, oh, hey, doc, you know, hey, what's up? Hi, Dr. Panza. And like, hey, you know, like, they're so used to seeing you and you're just like one of them. That's when they come talk to you. So that was one of the things that stood out. Be the furniture. Like, but the thing that's frustrating about that is it's hard for departments to open their doors and let outsiders in. You know, it's hard to say, you know, okay, here, I'm available, or you've got a contract with this company so that anybody who needs therapy can go. But just to have that person present. So things that have been suggested are, you know, have a one day a month, have you know, the docs in the office there, and anybody's free to come in and ask questions or talk. It's open door, talk about you, talk about a friend, come in, and it's all confidential. It's all covered, you know, it's whatever, but that they're so used to seeing you that, you know, over time they will come in and be like, oh yeah, you're okay. You know, it's doing ride-alongs with people. It's becoming familiar. But I find that it's hard to get departments to open that door and to kind of accept you as part of them.
Well, doesn't it depend entirely upon the personality of the psychologist as well? Like,
yeah.
some people would be really annoying to have around.
Yes.
Like, you would be great to have around. You're a nice person.
Thank you.
You're fun to talk to.
Thank you.
But I'm sure there's a lot of psychologists that are not.
Yeah, it's true. And they probably don't want to be police psychologists then, because you kind of got to... You got to at least have an appreciation, if not an affinity for that. There's always been something about it that's fascinating, you know, and that has drawn me in to say, you know what, this is just a stupid hard job. And the people who do it work so hard and put so much of themselves into it. I've just always had that soft spot.
I'm glad you do.
And so, yeah, like just being there and being present so that door is open and they might just slip into it.
Yeah.
Because if we can get them in there, I feel really confident that we can help. We know what to do. That's what we do. We help people who are depressed or anxious or traumatized or considering ending their life, because we, of all the things, want to stop that one.
Yeah. And obviously abuse.
Yeah.
Thank you.
doubt.
Thank you very much, Nancy.
You're welcome.
It's really good to talk to you, and I think what you do is very important. And I think we're both in agreement that it is an unbelievably difficult job and very underappreciated.
Yeah.
And, you know, there's a lot more good cops than there are bad cops.
That's for sure. That's
right.
for sure. Thank
Thank
you
you
for letting
very
me come
much.
today.
Do you have a social media or anything? Where
Mainly just email. I'm
Don't
pretty
give
low,
your email out.
I'm pretty low
Don't
profile.
do it.
I'll give you social media
Okay.
that people can go for.
what do you have?
I'll have to give it to you
Do you
later
have
because
Twitter or
I don't
Instagram?
tweet or Instagram. I just
No?
I stay away from it. Yeah, that's
Okay.
why I say
Good
I
for you.
function off email. I can't
All
deal
right.
with all the social media.
Good for you. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Thanks.
Hello, David. What's up, buddy?
If I leave right now, this will be the shortest
Yeah.
one you've ever done.
Ever now. You don't have to do this. I know you're worried you're going to say some crazy shit and you're going to torpedo your life. Now that you're a cult guru with strawberry blonde hair.
It's more,
Strawberry blonde.
well, it's a home job.
It's beautiful.
do-it-yourself. So it's more, my therapist would always say, lean into discomfort, what you don't like. And I hate gingers. So I said, why don't I just become one? I'm like,
Your therapist says lean into discomfort?
yeah, if there's something that, like, I'm in a men's group also. And they said, and I told them, I said, I'm going to go back on the Joe Rogan experience after 4, 5, 6 years. I don't know when the last time I was
Probably
here.
5, right?
I don't know. It's been a while. And so they go, lean into the discomfort.
Mm.
Start with what you least want to share.
Mm.
And I go, This is me trying to.
They don't know you that well. That's fucking terrible advice for you.
So I sit there, I'm driving over here, and I go, okay, start with what I least want to share. I pulled over on Van Nuys Boulevard, and I puked.
Really?
Yeah, I puked.
Wow.
I don't get nervous. I used to have my own podcast. I've talked to you a million times. And like, I just had like a visceral response, and I was like, and I just pulled over on Van Nuys, and I think someone took a picture of me. So if you're out there, and I don't get nervous. Like these things, like I'm able to just almost disassociate. It's like whatever, and just go into any situation. And I just felt, and I was like, maybe it was the breakfast I had. I had a hard-boiled egg and chia pudding. That's what I had for breakfast. So
that's it?
That's it. And I pull over, and I was like, oh, my God, I'm fucking nervous. I'm just going to puke. I look across the street. There's a guy like, fuck. And then I get in the car, and I'm like, do I really want to share with Joe that I tried on like 4 different outfits last night? Do I want to share with him that I got caught yesterday at I was eating at there's a place called Johnny Pastrami's in West Adams that just opened. It's an old restaurant that just reopened, and I know the guy that runs it, Danny, and he said, there's an outdoor. I only eat in outdoor spots right now, and I'm like, what the fuck? I'm so scared I'm gonna be canceled if I talk to Joe.
You're gonna be fine. We're gonna maneuver our way through this.
But then I go, I've been canceled so many times. Like I kind of like it. Feels good.
You haven't been canceled since the age of real canceling, though. The age of real canceling has been since you were on the podcast last. That's when canceling is kicked up to a new level because now the pile-ons happen.
Right.
Before there was just canceling, like you would get in trouble for things. Someone would write an article. You'd be like, oh my God, what did David do? He's crazy. But now the pile-on, the social media and the effectiveness of the pile-on has been established. So now whenever anything happens to someone, all the pile-on people.
But I like getting canceled. Like
Do you enjoy it?
Did you see the Michael Jordan documentary?
I still haven't seen it.
All right, I'm not gonna ruin it for you, but
I heard it's awesome.
The actual filmmaking is kind of amateurish, but the subject matter is so dynamic that like you're in it, and like the guy's a full-on gambling addict. Yeah. And it's 12 episodes. It could have probably been like 4, and the story's the same. It's just. This guy didn't give me the best seat on the airplane. This guy overlooked me in high school. It's like all these slights, and he takes it and he uses it as fuel. And so I sit here and I go, I'm driving to Joe Rogan's right now. I'm scared to be canceled. And I sit here and I go, every fucking horrible thing that's happened in my life, physical abuse, sexual abuse, verbal abuse, spiritual abuse, prison, getting my career taken away or this or, anything has always led to bigger and better. So I'm like, kind of like it.
But that's just because you're a real person. Like you're not full of shit in any way, shape, or form. You might be crazy, but you're a lovable crazy. And when people know who you actually are, it's like you have these moments where things are uncomfortable, and and you're confronted with a bad scene, but then you rise above.
Thank you, I appreciate that. What is your threshold with receiving compliments?
My threshold?
Yeah, what's your comfort level? I haven't seen you in a long time.
Yeah, it's been a while. I don't know.
Can I give you
okay
5?
Sure.
Okay. You only look better as you get older.
Oh, thank you.
You have a beautifully shaped skull. Like as an artist, as a sculptor, like I painted you.
Yes.
I don't like the painting anymore. I think I can do a better one now.
It's awesome. It's an awesome painting.
I'm like, this guy, like all artists and sculptors out there listening, paint this guy's skull. It's beautiful. You're unbelievably curious, inspirational. You give me hope. You're funny. You're entertaining. And you're a leader. Just talk to all your guys right now. Like you're leading this charge to Texas right now. And you're a perfectly imperfect, unrepeatable miracle of the universe.
Wow, that's heavy.
You're great, man.
Well, that's very sweet of you. I appreciate you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, man. That's very nice of you.
Yeah, I love, I haven't talked to you in a long time, but I told you, I'm sure a lot of people feel this way. You're just on all the time. you're in on YouTube or on a podcast or on someone else's podcast. So I'm like, fuck. I think about you. You're in my head. Can I give you an on-air gift?
Sure.
While I was trying on all my outfits last night, I was like, I want to see who Joe's talking to. So this mic smells like Post Malone. So I was painting last night, and I made you this shirt.
Oh my goodness.
Because you guys got on a little thing. I didn't listen to the whole episode yet because it's 4 hours, but you were talking about ghosts at the beach, ghosts on the beach. So there's ghosts on the beach right there.
You made this?
Well, I didn't make it's you see the ghosts on. You see the ghosts on the front.
Yes, it's fucking awesome.
You could wear it. You could give it away.
Dude, I'm gonna wear the shit out of this. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Man. That's so cool.
You're welcome.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
Ghosts on the beach.
Yeah, you never see ghosts on the beach. All the ghost stories are always at night.
It's true, right?
Yeah.
That was a good point. I felt like I made a good point.
That was a great point.
Because like if ghosts were real, like if they were really scary, you'd see them in cool times, like at the pool. You know,
doing backflips
in Vegas, drinking, everybody's having fun. Fucking ghost shows up, freaks everybody out. Never.
So I got all the embarrassing stuff out of the way, I think. Oh, no. So I was at this outdoor restaurant eating at the corner and not having a full-on panic attack, but I have a nice, beautiful, wonderful, quiet life now. I'm not on the air. I don't do podcasts. I don't do interviews. I'm not like, my life is amazing. Like, I completely changed my life since the last time I saw you. And I go, I do want to talk to Joe, but maybe I'll just talk to you on the phone or go visit you in Texas. Like, do I need to go on the air?
Well, I gave you that option. I was like, you don't have to do this. But
right, but I'm a sick person.
But you're a fun guy. You're fun. People enjoy listening to you.
So I had this sculpture that I made, and it was in my car, and I just brought it out, and I sat next to it, and I said, I'm just going to prepare a little bit. So I started preparing for the Joe Rogan experience, and I started talking to this sculpture and I'm like looking, I'm like, it was 3 o'clock, there was no one eating there, and I got caught. Like,
caught talking to a sculpture?
I got caught talking to sculpture. I was talking to this thing I made, and it wasn't a friend, but it was a guy I knew, and he's like, Dave? And then he comes over, and I'm like, oh, fuck, dude. And he's like, shame, red face. I'm like, oh, hey. And he's like, are you talking to a thing right now? And I was like, oh, yeah, I'm going on this thing tomorrow. I just wanted to prepare a little bit. I'm a little bit nervous. I got my nerves. Because I talked to you, Thursday? No,
yeah.
I talked to you a few days ago. And we talked for a while, and I'm like, this guy is a professional talker. He's a commentator. He's a stand-up. He has his podcast that goes on for hours and hours, thousands of hours. It's an art. You're a painter. You're a MMA artist. In my world, I'm also an MMA artist, mixed media artist, right? That's the bisexual of painting. It's like you use everything. Everything, right. Anything goes. So I go, this guy is so fucking good at it. Because I got off the phone with you, and I'm like, he's so good at talking. He's so good at talking. It's like when you practice something so much that you don't even know how good you are at it, And even your podcast, they go on for a few hours, which is against everyone's like, oh, kids, they have no attention span these days. It's like 10 seconds, 15 seconds. It's fucking TikToks or Instagram. And here's this guy, he's talking to Post Malone for 4 hours and making it seem just seamless and effortless. And that's because you're a master at it. And I go, my confidence level as far as this art form is low. I don't talk to people anymore. I mean, I talk to my friends, but I don't talk as storytelling or entertainment. My memory's shot to shit.
Really?
I watched 3 seasons of Ozark, and I can't even tell you anyone's name. I go, there's Jason Bateman, and there's the kid, and the kid with the drone, and I don't know, the wife. I don't know anyone's names. I can't recall anything. And you have all these scientists that are brilliant. You have comedians, and everyone's like quick-witted, and they're fast, and I go, I'm dim-witted. I'm like a human soft serve. I'm like,
you comparing yourself to the other people? You got to let that go right now.
Well,
you are who you are. The other people can't do what you do.
That's true.
Yeah, your abstract way of thinking, like the way you are as a person, how you're so freely yourself, That's what allows you to create such amazing art. Like you're free. Some people can't be themselves. They're not good at it. You're really good at being David Cho.
Thank you.
You're really good at it.
I'm horrible at taking compliments, by the way. So thank you.
It's uncomfortable for everybody, I think, unless you're a real creep.
You did it great right now.
Just
You're
hung in
fucking
there.
awesome.
Just hung in there.
That was good. Could I have done more? Could I have given you like?
No, we're good. We're good.
You want to hear something funny?
Okay.
So the reason why I kind of did that was I wake up every morning racked with anxiety and nerves, and it starts immediately. You're a piece of shit. You're no good. People don't like you, this and that. And then, like, what did I say when you showed me my painting from 2018? I immediately have to self-deprecate. That's not that good. I could do a better one. So I talked to my therapist about it. I say, I don't have a high self-opinion of myself. And they go, well, an average human living in society today, from morning till night, will say thousands of horrible things about themselves. Like thousands, like I'm not good enough, I'm fat, I'm ugly, this and that. And for you to say just a few nice things, I'm like, what is this, some fucking Stuart Smalley shit? Like, and I'm good enough, and and they go, see, you did it again. You just went right into it. Like, why can't you say you're a good painter? You know you're a good painter. Why can't you say you're? And so they go, give me 5 right now. 5 what? Say 5 fucking things about yourself that, and I couldn't give them one. I couldn't give them one. And they're like, don't you think that's awful?
Has that always been the case?
I think so. I think it's to go into that kind of self-hatred is, I could sit here and say it's a Korean thing, K-rage, but it's...
K-rage.
They said, take a stick of deodorant, go home tonight, and write, I am enough on your mirror, so you see it every morning. And I go, I'm not doing that. That's so stupid. That's fucking retarded. I'm not doing that.
You're wasting deodorant.
Yeah. They go, you're paying us. You're here. Just do it. All right, fine. I'll do it. I go and I write, I misspell it, ENUFF. I am enough. And then I go next week and they go, so how's it going? Brushing your teeth, you look at, I'm enough. I go, I can't see it. They're like, what kind of deodorant did you use? The clear invisible one. No, get the thick, white, chunky, whatever.
Antiperspirant.
Yeah, Old Spice and like you're a fucking graffiti artist, right? So, okay, and I said I can do it, but I don't believe it, because I can sit here and tell you the amount of times in my life that I wasn't enough. Like, I can sit here and go through many, many stories of women dumping me for richer, better looking, more famous, better this, better that. I can tell you of jobs I didn't get. So I'm not enough, and I'm not, so, and it's this struggle. It's this burning fucking, like the Michael Jordan shit. Like, I gotta fucking, I'm not at war. You can't fucking cancel me. I've already canceled myself. How are you gonna cancel someone who's already canceled? There's nothing you're gonna say. There's nothing you're gonna fucking do that's gonna outweigh anything I've already said to myself. That guy sucks. He's ugly. He's fat. He's full of shit. I've already said that, So.
Do you think that fuels your art? Do you think there's a benefit to
absolutely.
that sort of? Yeah.
Absolutely. But, there's been that debate forever. How do you create great art? I'm not talking about good art, but like the transcendent art, the art that you remember it. It'll live on for generations. And it's like, it's like the Picasso and Van Gogh and all the comedians that fucking hate it wasn't a debate for me. When I look at the art that I enjoy, the comedy that I like, the music that I like, you must fucking suffer. You must suffer. You have to suffer. Comfort is the killer of creativity. That's what I used to say. And, I'm saying it now, but like I'd be like in a room like ranting this. Comfort is the killer of creativity. You gotta fucking.
It's the killer of everything, man.
But I'm rich as fuck.
Yeah.
I'm very comfortable.
But you're comfortable financially, but that's how you keep sharp. You keep sharp by not being comfortable in other ways.
So I sit there and I'm going off on this rant. I'm like in a fucking echo chamber. They're like, how long have you been telling this story for? My whole life. It's not a debate for me.
Right.
Do you know great artists that are comfortable and they're happy and they're like they have loving families, and they're
There's always something. There's always something.
Right.
I think you can have a balance, but you have to have this thing.
right.
Whatever that thing is, there's got to be some sort of a struggle.
And that was never a debate for me. I go, there has to be that struggle. And they go, but what if you take it away? Like, what if you chose happiness over great art? What if you chose... And they go, Dave, for someone who's rebelled and like made your own rules and done everything your own way, it's so weird that you just kind of accept this. They go, like what you just said, can great transcendent next level art be created without that thing, without that edge, with you pursuing joy and peace and love in your life? And I go, you know what? Never tried it. I never tried it. Well, why haven't you tried it? What'd you just say? I don't know. FEPSH. Fear, ego, pride, shame, humiliation. That's why you never tried it. All right. Fuck. You know? And I go, you know what? I'll try it. And today I'm the happiest I've ever been. You know, like I think I might be a little bit sick because I'm sitting here, because I'm like, why would I risk how awesome my life is right
But
now?
why do you keep saying that? Why do you think that you're going to risk? You're a fun guy to talk to. We're going to have fun.
We're definitely.
But you associate public speaking and podcasts with causing trouble because you were so. But people don't know your podcast was legendary
Jamie,
for being so ridiculous.
Jamie, you guys are moving to Texas, right? Yeah. Will there be any vacation or break between?
Yeah, a little small, but like,
I associate. I guess because I tell myself a story. I know a lot of podcasters. I know a lot of comedians, and they don't. Oh, okay. You know what? Fuck that. Forget. I'll use I statements. I had a podcast, and as
Buck Wild podcast, son. I would listen to your podcast sometimes. I would go, God damn, Dave. Holy shit.
and you saying that right now, I'll get a hit right now. There's a dopamine charge
that
going
was
on.
fun
I'm like,
podcast,
Joe,
man.
the great Joe Rogan is telling me my show is Buck Wild, and
Well, it's like you. Like, even the way you describe your own anxiety and self-hatred, it's like there's a freedom to your expression that you would talk about in the podcast. You would say the most embarrassing, humiliating shit, and you would say it freely and openly, and then discuss why it's embarrassing and why it's humiliating and what you did wrong and what was fucked up about it and what you were thinking while you were doing, how you knew it was fucked up. It was like riveting, man. I remember I was parked in my car once, and you and Asa, I forget what you guys were talking about, but I was like, Jesus Christ, I have to see how this plays out. So I'm sitting there. I didn't get out of my car for like 5 minutes just waiting for this conversation to play out.
wow, thank you. I mean, I don't even know where you would even listen to it. I have a strong support system of friends and family that care about me, and when I went off the rails and completely lost my mind, they took it off the air, which I
Yeah.
went crazy. Like, I don't even.
Well, this was back when it was on there.
I'm sure it's like on the dark web somewhere.
Oh, it's for sure. Well, we were talking the other day about how you kept recording it and you didn't release any of them.
I never stopped.
I know, but what I said is what you should do is, because you were talking about doing it again, and you're like, should I do it again? Like, what? Fuck, my life is so good right now. Should I do it again? And this is why I'll tell you what I said over the phone, and I'll say it to you in person. You should do it if you want to.
Okay.
And the reason why you should do it if you want to is because the world needs more wild people. The world needs more wild people. People are goddamn scared right now, David. They're scared. There's a bunch of people out there that are terrified to be free. They're terrified to express themselves because they're so worried about being attacked. And it's that self-limiting and self-censoring is one of the real problems with social media censorship. It's not just that you're censoring people for opinions you don't agree with, but it causes other people to self-censor because they're afraid of being
I
canceled
can't
and
control
censored.
myself.
Of course you can't. You're an
And
artist.
this is a fucking, like, I went on Stir. That was live.
Yeah.
This isn't live?
No.
Okay. But you used to be live.
Yeah.
It's a fucking high wire act.
The high wire.
I don't know.
The
Like,
live thing is a higher wire.
I'm a
act.
severe, like, codependent, like, person. Like, when I go on the Joe Rogan show, I feel like an absolute failure when I leave here. If I'm like, I didn't make Joe laugh, I didn't entertain him.
You already made me laugh. We can stop it right now.
No, but I'm saying, so at that time, we're going back
Yes.
5, 6, 7 years. I felt I need to one-up myself every time. Like, man, Joe just said, fuck, man, you went to a crazy place with Asa. So I was like, I took my. Do you have a lot of? I know we were talking about Alex Gray, but you have a lot of painters on here.
I've had painters on here. I wouldn't say a lot, but
They're horrible speakers. They're not. They live up here.
yeah.
So they have a very hard time verbalizing. Like, and I get there.
Well,
sometimes.
Alex he's one of my favorites to have on and to talk to, but he's just so deeply embedded in the spirit world.
Right.
He's got like 2 feet on earth, and the rest of his body is in this dimension of spirits.
He's an anomaly, but usually artistic types, painters, artists, they have a very difficult time speaking, which is why they paint.
Right. They're internalizing everything.
And I got bored of painting. In the same way that when I went to go to the I'm going to kind of do a weird flex right now, but I went to the Picasso Museum in Spain, and they have the all his art displayed by decade. Here's his art from 0 to 10, 10 to 20. If you look at the art that he did by the time he was 15, as an artist, that he's bored. He knows how to paint whatever, like all
realistic stuff.
And then you just see him going, I'm bored with that. Let me go cubist. Let me go blue period. And then at the end, it's just scribbles, right? It's just like, fuck, I'm trying my hardest to get back to drawing like a kid where I don't give a fuck, Yeah. And people go, oh, I like this stuff. And for me, I'm like, man, people, oh man, that guy just got lucky. Everything I come with like a killer attitude, So when I did Howard Stern, when I did your show, and I just started, I was like a year and a half. I remember I met with Jason Kaplan, the producer of the Stern Show, and he's like, we have a channel here at Sirius, and I'm like, hold on, time out. I've been podcasting for fucking 1 year, and I'm gonna be on the Howard Net. Like, my head was like exploding. I'm like,
so they offered you a show on their channel?
We were talking about it.
Oh.
And I was like getting pumped up, and I was like, I fucking knew I was awesome at talking. I fucking knew this shit. And I go, but what are we doing? Talking about relationships. I'm talking to a porn star. I'm talking to this. How do I take it to the next level? How do I when I close my eyes and I hear a podcast, I'm going to interview this interesting person, and can you believe this person, and this shit, and it's facts, interesting thing, story, weird anecdote. And I go, talking, fuck! Enough with the fucking talking. Like, I'm a fucking artist. Like, I want to bring some shit to this. Well, what does that look like? My guest today is yellow. What? I'm the color blue. What? What are you talking about, Dave? So I'll tell you. Then you fucking tell me here in person whether this shit should come out or not.
I feel like I need to get high.
Go for it.
Just keep going. But
I go, what is that like for me to meditate, close my eyes, and be the color blue? Not think about the color blue, but be the exact color blue. And my guest today is yellow. Okay?
You don't get high, right?
I don't get high. I think you'll see why I don't need.
I already see it.
And then I go, oh fuck! I'll get triggered one day, and I'll think of someone who's like my enemy, someone who's coming after me. I'll be like, fuck this guy. Fuck, and I'll read all the comments and shit, and it's like, Dave Cho's a piece of shit, and I'll go, I'm gonna become my victimizer right now, and the person I'm gonna interview is myself, as a kidnapped victim. What? So I gag myself, and then I become the person who just kidnapped me. And I start screaming, Dave, you're a fucking piece of shit because you fucking do this and you steal and you rip off people and you're a fucking and I go and then it sounds like fuck you, and I'm not pretending.
In your head.
I'm not pretending.
Okay.
I'm so
you're locked in.
I'm locked in. I'm like, my only goal right now is to try to convince this guy to let me go. Like, I'm a kidnap victim right now.
Right.
And I go, I need to fucking figure out how to, like, hostage negotiate myself out of this. And then I play this guy who's like, my only job right now is to murder you. I want to fucking kill you right now. And I'm, like, my friends come in, open the podcast door. I'm on the floor in the fetal position. And they're like, let's go to dinner. And I'm like, you guys want to hear what I just recorded? This should never go out into the world. This should never go out. And I go, hey, I'm not gay, but what would it be like to just do a podcast with a huge dick in your mouth? So I go on Amazon, I order like a butt plug, and I stick it in my mouth, and for then 3 hours I go.
For 3 hours, you did a podcast with a butt plug in your mouth?
2.5. 2.5.
The whole. What did it sound like?
You want me to send it to you?
Sure.
And
But why? Wouldn't you just
I want
get it after like the first couple of seconds? Like, oh yeah, this isn't gonna work.
Hey, there's a lot of nuance to butt plugs and the, like where it's gonna go.
Right.
And
There's no standard butt plug.
I started
it's
getting
not like Q-tips.
it was a huge one. I was getting TMJ. My jaw was hurting.
Jesus.
And so I'm listening to this stuff, and my friends are like, at this point, there's no difference between you and the homeless guy on the street that's talking to himself, that's having a fight with his boss that fired him 20 years ago, and I go, were you raised religious at all?
From the time I was like 5 till I was around 7, I kicked it.
You ever see people talk in tongues?
I have never seen that live, but I've seen a lot of videos. It looks like it'd be a good time.
So see, you're an adult, so you're like, this would be a good time. As a kid, terrifying, right?
So you've seen it.
So my mom took me to this church, and I mean, I'm scarred, like.
Is it Pentecostal?
It was Baptist.
Baptist.
So I walk into this room, and I was 5 years old, writhing, just. I'm like, right. And I go, Mom, let's get the fuck out. What? And they're like, these people are touched by God right now. They're talking directly to God. And I go, oh my, and it stayed with me, I start teaching autistic children when I used to live in San Jose art. I tried to help, give back to the community. And my friend said, can you start teaching this kid Joseph? And then that led to a network of like all these autistic children that needed art lessons. So I meet this kid, Steven, and he can't put a sentence together. Hi, Dave. Like, oh, hey, come on, let's paint today. Fearless. And we go outside on my deck and we look at the San Jose skyline, right? Photographic memory.
Ooh.
Not to scale, like everything's off proportion, looks very like, I come back, I go, okay, Steven, let's paint. He starts drawing buildings. And I'm like, fuck. And like this, like not looking, just like, and like like some kind of weird mump. And I go, this fucking guy that can't put a sentence together is a genius. He has a something in his brain is tapped into something that I'm not tapped into, and now some words are coming out of his mouth that sound like that fucking tongues kind of stuff. You ever see that Jay-Z documentary where they show him like he never writes anything down, like it's all in his head?
Yeah, I've heard that.
And
but
he's
I
like,
didn't see the documentary.
and he does like a weird mumbling. He's like, it's.
Oh, where he's like doing it.
But it sounds like that.
Right.
So I go, I need to do a podcast about that. So I go in the room and I go, right now, as someone who's never spoken in tongues or not hooked into whatever Jay-Z's hooked into and whatever my friend Steven, I'm going to talk. That one went on for 6 hours. 6 hours of me creating an alien fucking language, trying to talk directly to God. And that one, 100% my friends go, you cannot put this out.
So
you have a fucking butt plug in your mouth. You're talking in tongues to God. You're kidnapping yourself. And
hold on. These aren't all the same episode, right?
No. Many different.
But the butt plug, you didn't talk tongues with the butt plug, right? This is
that. It sounds very similar. Those two episodes sound very similar.
But the talking tongues. So you there was no real words. You just sat down and decided.
This is what the butt plug one sounds like.
How many hours does it go for? I just don't understand why you wouldn't have stopped after the first few seconds. That's a hell of a butt plug. Like a water bottle, an 8-ounce. What is it? 8 ounces? 16 ounces? Yeah, 8 ounces would be not that big a deal. I get it. So
you got it
the
after.
language thing that you did you talk any English? Or just get in there and
my
the
goal
first
was
podcast? Just
don't try to. I want this to sound like complete gibberish.
Right.
And
so from the moment you started, there was no like, hello, I'm going to try something now. No. You know who did that, man? It was real weird. McKenna used to do that. Terrence McKenna used to do it. I think he did it under the influence of psychedelics. He would talk in like these weird, crazy fake words. What is that called? There's a term for it. Not just speaking in tongues. Glossolalia.
Gibberish.
Is that it?
Oh,
Yeah.
a scat.
It's called glossolalia. Yeah. Oh, is this McKenna? Yeah. Play this just so you can listen to some of this.
Seems to be of language. Some define it. It's language-like activity.
Says
in
he
the
talks
absence
about
of
it.
meaning.
Oh,
So-
he talks
And
about
it's
it.
a very interesting
Well, I've
thing
heard him do it in.
neurologically.
There was a song. He did a thing with.
You want to try it with me right now?
Sure. What do you want to do?
Don't use any words that sound like the English language. Just close your eyes and try to think.
Why do I have to close my eyes?
Just to like, you don't have to close
Okay.
your eyes.
That was when not. Sounds fake.
See,
I would need time.
you need time.
Need time to work on that. But I would bet.
But does anyone need to hear that?
I was- See, I need to get on that level.
I fucking dare
Yeah.
you to do stand up in that language.
No, people pay money. People pay money. I can't do that to them. I'll do it by myself alone, maybe. But that thing, I was just joking around about it. Was it the Post Malone thing where I was saying I think that aliens would be so good at language they would be able to talk to us in a language and we would understand it. That they would be able to figure out sound to the point where sound could they could embed information in sound with their super complicated language to the point where they could talk to you and you don't have to understand their language.
You don't know by now?
Well, what do I not know?
You're an alien.
Oh, that's ridiculous.
Like the amount you don't think there's any part of you that your fascination with it that you might be like a sleeper cell? No, I'm serious. Like what? Come on. Oh, I've heard all this like simulation theory. What are the chances that this man with this beautifully shaped skull is born on planet Earth? And whatever, there's probably some kind of block but then you become this person and you use the human voice to connect with sports, science, comedy, and then you amass an audience of hundreds of millions of people. And I go, this fucker's an alien.
No.
Yeah. There's no way you're an alien?
No.
I think you're an alien.
I'm a moron. Listen to me. Trust me. I just do things a lot. That's what I do. I just do things until I get good at them. I will
Start the
things-
church, man. I'll fucking join. Joe Rogan.
I don't
Let's-
have any talent at anything.
See?
Other
You're doing
than,
it right now.
Than working hard and getting obsessed with things. That's my number one talent.
You're extremely talented.
Well, I had physical talent when I was started doing Taekwondo. I had physical advantages that I recognized very early. They're real advantages. Like some people just have extra speed, they have extra power, they have things that their body can do it's not warranted by the amount of effort they put into it. There's that, but outside of that, everything has just been being obsessed with things, and that's a human characteristic. That's not an alien characteristic, and a lot of it is like we have our own struggles, right? Like your struggle is you tell yourself you're not good. I don't tell myself I'm not good, but I'm never fully satisfied with anything. anything that I do personally, whether it's the way I behave or the things that I write or perform or a podcast or a stand-up comedy special.
So you
or
do the
a
same
UFC
shit I just did.
Yeah, but I don't hate myself. But I'm never happy. I'm never happy
hate
with
myself,
like
but I'm never happy.
I get to a point where I go, all right, I did my best. I know I put in the effort. I know I researched it.
So that's what makes you inhuman, because most humans do hate themselves.
Well, what it is that
you alien motherfucker.
Because of the fact that I'm obsessed with doing better at things, I put the work in. And from my own personal experience, when I have had moments of self-hating, it's not like I've just never had any self-hating. It was mostly because I didn't put the work in.
You spend a lot of time with this guy. Have you ever seen him do like weird bathroom or like anything that would be like non-human?
There's nothing non-human
Would you?
about
Maybe
me,
you're
man.
fucking alien too, Jamie.
Jamie's way more of an alien than me. Jamie reads my mind 100%.
Wow.
I'm about to say something and Jamie will just go and he'll type it up.
Did
He
you know
knows.
Chester from Linkin Park?
I did not. I met him once, but I did not know him.
So I know Joe Hahn in his band, the DJ guy. So I went to his house once and he played, I don't know what you call them, scratch tracks or something. And the way I know that they make music is they all live in different cities. So they just, like, the guitar player will make something and then send it to like Mike Shinoda. And Joe played me an entire album where Chester just sings over every track gibberish.
Oh, wow.
And it sounded better than any of their music that I've ever heard of.
Wow.
And it was like, because he's just trying to get the, and it was like scat. I don't know what you call it.
Do you know the Black Keys?
I've heard their music. I don't know them.
Dan Auerbach, the
Yeah, yeah.
singer. He told me he just makes up words.
That's fucking awesome.
Yeah, he
Shooby-doo-wah.
Yeah, he just like, he first of all, that guy smokes tons of weed. I mean, just constantly high.
Right.
He's like, I get high and I just come up with lyrics. I just start singing. I start playing and I make up words.
Wow.
I go, you make up words? He goes, yeah.
So that's
I want it
art.
to sound, yeah, fuck yeah, it's art.
So you just said something.
Black Keys are phenomenal.
These people are paying money to come see me do comedy, so I'm not going to do my true alien tongue version stand-up set.
That's something I would have to practice.
Right.
See, that's the thing. Like, if it would be too indulgent to do it in front of them without any practice. If I knew that there was a way that I could do it, that I could distill it down to an entertaining form,
Right.
I would definitely do it.
So you've done like thousands of these now.
Yeah.
You've had every single different kind of profession and weird personality sitting here, and I was getting to the point in my podcast where I was getting pretty big guests, and I was finding myself dissatisfied, but unlike you, hating myself and becoming very bored. And I said, I'm not good at speaking because I have blind spots. I stutter, I say like a lot, I say and I talk over people, and I'm trying to sort of like wedge my agenda and try to get my point across. And I go, if my consciousness, my soul, who's talking in this mic right now, is what is an interview? We want to learn about ourselves through another person. We want to learn, you know.
Right.
And I go, there's a lot of people living inside me. There's I'm like, oh, there's a guy here right now that's fucking puking on Van Nuys Boulevard, and there's another guy that's super confident and cocky. And so I go,
you're a collective.
There's a short bus in my brain, and the person driving right now is a confident, sober, mentally stable. But on that bus, there's a racist Dave, there's a sexist Dave, there's a werewolf Dave, there's a trans Dave, there's a experimental butt plug Dave. There's many Daves, and it's whatever attention I want to give them.
Yeah.
And you ever done a psychodrama?
Psychodrama?
Yeah.
What is that?
It's like a therapy tool where you're in a room like this with like five other patients, or I don't know, it could be like up to 10, I guess. And you identify one of the most traumatic moments of your life, and that you're stuck. You can't get past. I can't get past my parents divorcing. I can't get past failing at the national, whatever
Right.
that moment is.
Okay.
And so then you keep playing that on a loop in your brain, and no matter what you do in life, that's always still going on. And so it's a tool to rewire your brain. So it's like, okay, you're gonna play yourself. How old were you then? 16. Okay, so you're Joe Rogan, 16. Who was there? my dad was there, my mom was there, my coach, you know. And then so all the other people play the roles of those things. And then you just go through. And then what happened? And then this guy punched me. Pause. What are you smelling right now? You go around the room. Then you just dissect the moment. And you're like, so what did you need at that moment? Well, I needed my dad to fucking step up for me. But did he? No. So in this version, have him come in. So you're rewriting history. And I go home. I've done hundreds of these now. And I go, has anyone ever done a psychodrama with themselves? Right? Because there's many voices on the 101 over here. It's like, Dave, turn the car around. Who's talking right now? Scared, fucking confident Dave, we need you up on the bus. Come to the front. Okay. It's like, hey, why the fuck did you stick a Nestle Pure Life water ball in your mouth? Because you wanted to explain to Joe what a butt plug. Did you need to do that? And then, so I do this for a few hours. Of course, I'm recording. And once again, I'm in a fucking room talking with a hot mic, crying, laughing, screaming to myself.
This sounds like an awesome ad for a Patreon page. This is what you do. You take those episodes, you start new ones, and you take those crazy ones and you just put it up only for Patreon members. And just ask them to please not share it unless people are paying. And then use that money for charity. Probably make $1 million in a week.
I don't know. I'm trying to heal myself.
We all are.
Right.
We all are. What you're saying is mirrored in a lot of people, especially you're different. I'm a different person all the time. I'm a lot of different people, and some of them have their shit together, and those ones guide the other ones away from the fucking rocks.
In a fight, flight, or freeze situation, what are you? Because I'll just tell you, I could give a master class in freezing.
If you can get out, you should get out. Always.
Flight.
If you can fly, flight is always the best option.
I'm a master freezer.
You can't freeze. Flight, I'm either flight or fight. Those are it's one or two, and you can't take either one of them lightly.
Okay,
like if you're flight, you have to know there's a reason to get out, and that reason has to make sense, and you have to be able to assess very quickly whether or not this is even going to work. Are you going to get out of here? Is this going to work, or am I going to have to fight? And if I'm going to have to fight, I should fight now. And I should be only thinking about that. You can't, if you're going to fight, you can never think, maybe I shouldn't be doing this. Or maybe I should get out. Maybe I should back off. Maybe I should, I don't know, maybe I fucked up. You can't think that. Once you pull the trigger, you got to let the wolf out of the cage.
Okay,
and if you're going to run, you got to run. You can't go, Jesus, am I really running? What am I doing? No, you just got to go. You got to get the fuck out of there. You can't worry about your ego. If you can escape, especially violent encounters, if you can escape and your ego is the only thing that gets damaged, congratulations. Your ego you can get over that. But physical violence is terrifying.
So I need your help then. Okay. I told you the other day, this is pre-quarantine, pre-Panda. I'm in the car with my dad, and we were going to our favorite Chinese restaurant in San Gabriel Valley, which by where we live should take 15, 20 minutes tops. We live in Los Angeles. I look at the Google Maps, it says an hour and 10 minutes to get there. It's prime LA traffic. My dad had a stroke 2 years ago, so he's got a kind of gimpy leg. He sort of drags his foot, so I'm like his Uber driver now. I take him everywhere. And he's like a typical old Korean guy. He likes to eat close to home, no lines, fast, in and out, done. So yeah. We get in the car 5:30, 6 on a weekday night, and it's just traffic bumper to bumper. And he's like, fuck, look at this traffic. And the thing that added to this, which I didn't know, was it was the Academy Awards night.
Oh, no.
So now it's like we're not moving. And we're sitting at the light, and my phone starts blowing up. Like, congratulations. Like, fuck, like all caps. I go, what's going on? I look at my phone. My dad's like, hey, don't look at your phone when you're driving. I'm like, we're not going anywhere, bro. Chill the fuck out. And Parasite, the Korean film, had just won Best Film like in the American Academy Awards. And all my non-white friends are starting to, like, because Asians all know each other, right? We kind of do. But congratulations on Parasite. And I go, I had nothing to do with that movie.
Whoa,
Like-
wait a minute. You're getting congratulated because it's Korean?
Yeah, they're like, you must be so proud of your people. Like, you did it, man.
Let me ask you this. Is that
Yeah.
racist for them to do that? It seems a little racist. It's a racist congratulatory thing. Like, your
Yeah, it's a li-
people, like if somebody called me up and congratulated me for something Italians did, I'd be like, what?
Beautiful meatball.
Fuck is wrong with you?
Beautiful meatball.
That, I don't even know that guy.
So that's what I'm saying. I'm in the car going, I don't even fucking know that guy.
Is it all white people that are calling you congratulating you?
One Mexican guy, two white guys. It's three people. Three
Okay.
people, and it's the news just hit.
Oh, okay.
First time in history, non-American film wins. You know, it's a big
Yeah.
deal. The Koreans are fucking like going crazy in Koreatown, and then my mom, who's in another car, calls me, and she's like, "Get that guy over to our house for dinner. I want to cook for him."
That's awesome.
And I go, "Mom, you fucking think we all know each other?
That's
you know that
hilarious.
fucking guy. You know that
That's
guy."
hilarious.
Mom, just because I'm a Korean in the I don't know all of them. She's like, you know Steven Yeun. He was in Okja. Okja. He knows Bong Jong. Fuck you, Mom. The fuck off. Like,
Your mom's even more racist.
but my dad, he likes that shit. He's very prideful. He's a prideful Korean guy, except he was born in China.
oh, wow.
So during the war times, he's Korean, but he was born in China. He was on the run. And when I like to fuck with my dad, I grab him by the neck and I go, "Hey, you Chinese motherfucker, you ching chong motherfucker." Is it racist? I don't know.
No, I don't think
I
it
grab
is.
my dad by the neck. He's one of the most prideful Korean people. And we're not going anywhere. We're sitting at the lights, and I go, "Fucking did it, man." What? I'm having a connection with my dad. I go, "You ching chong Chinese motherfucker came to America in the 70s." He's like, "Yeah, there was no traffic then." I go, "Yeah, just let me fucking let me tell my story." You come here. They try to fucking burn you out of Koreatown. They burn your fucking shop down. They call you chink. They call you fucking gook. You come here with nothing. You're working on an assembly line. You're poor. You raised 3 boys. You have no fucking money. And look at us now. Parasite, bitch. Fucking Parasite. Dave Chang, best fucking chef in America. Roy Choi, fucking K-pop, dominating the fucking
Bobby Lee.
Bobby Lee, Steve Lee. Like, we're kimchi on the menu everywhere now. Everywhere. You want some kimchi pizza? You want some
It's
fucking
probiotic all of a sudden.
probiotic shit up in your gut? Like everywhere. This tiny fucking country in Korea. My dad's getting pumped up. He's like, "Yeah, we fucking did it, man." And all the texts are still coming. Yes. There's a racist. What the fuck's the term? It's called a perpetual foreigner, where it doesn't matter that I was born in Los Angeles, that you always feel like
A foreigner.
growing up. The message from my parents was, don't piss off the white people. Like, we need to act in a way that's, what's the other one? Model minority. We can't do anything that like upsets them because we might get sent back on the boat. It's like, you need to act in a certain way. You have to dress a certain way. You have to comb your hair. You have to get a certain kind of job, doctor, lawyer. And you need to act that fucking way because we don't want to get sent back. And so, yes, father. Yes, honorable father. So I'm sitting there and I'm feeling myself. I'm feeling my race. I'm feeling my dad. And I'm like, we fucking did it. Fucking, man, everywhere. K-pop, K-food. This tiny fucking country that's been under attack for generations
Korean
is
barbecue.
fucking dominating. Now they'll like us. Now they'll let us into the club. Now, and we haven't moved an inch. We're still sitting in traffic. And he goes, "I would trade all of that for us to fucking go home right now or beat this traffic." I go, "All right, whatever." Cut to Academy Awards to, what was that? It was the Academy Awards, and then when was the quarantine? 2-3 months later? No traffic. No traffic. I can get to the beach in 15 minutes from my house. It used to take an hour and a half. I go, "Dad, let's go to the beach. Let's get the fuck out of here." Sitting in the car, and you remember when the quarantine first started? You saw families walking down, like, entire families walking the dog. Everything was closed. Like, there was no smog in LA. We fucking drive to the beach. We're almost there at a red light, and there's a guy walking his dog with his kid. And I get a kind of mad dog kind of vibe, like he's staring at me, and our windows are down, and I don't know, I'm always talking really loud to my dad because he's hard of hearing. And the light turns green, and he like with like disdain and disgust, he just goes like this. He pulls his eyes back.
He made
He did the ching.
face.
Yeah, he did the.
He did that to you and your dad.
And I can sit here and call tough guy from the butt. Fuck that guy. I got a thick skin, and maybe because I was with my dad, and I love my dad, and I saw that my dad saw him do that, and I was like, fuck, man, like. And I froze. I was like, my dad is.
Well, that's wise. That's wise.
I mean, he's with his fucking kid, and I go,
Listen, it doesn't matter. You never know. If you go over and engage some guy in a physical confrontation and he beats you to death, there's no comfort in the fact that his kid was there to watch. You have to really. People are so flippant about engaging in physical violence. It's very fucking dangerous. It's dangerous for everybody. And you never know what someone knows.
So I snap in those moments. I go to rage. And like maybe if I was by myself, maybe I would have been more quick-witted and had a snappy comeback. But someone hasn't done that to me. The last time someone did this to me, I was probably in a third world country 15, 20 years ago. And before that, maybe I was in grade school. And as a 44-year-old man who's in a lot of pain, that's been working on himself to heal, it like hurt me. And
Well, fuck that guy. Just get away from him. That's the best. You're not gonna fix him by beating the shit out of him. You're not gonna change anything. The idea that you're gonna punish him for that, and it's gonna make him hate Asian people more. He's just a fucked up dude. And a guy who would do that to you for no reason at all, just sees you and wants to hurt you and make you feel bad, that kind of a guy is hurting, man. He's probably been abused his whole life. There's probably something real wrong with him. He's probably had a fucked up alcoholic dad or something, or some uncle did something to him. It's always something. People that lash out and try to hurt people randomly for no reason are all in pain. You know, it's that old expression: hurt people, hurt people.
definitely.
And that's true.
And I'm hurt.
Yeah. But
So-
but that's that's an intelligent thing to do nothing, because your pause is wise, because you can call it freezing, but you're stuck in an unwinnable situation. If you go over and beat that guy's ass, like, that is violence. It's dangerous. You never know how it's going to turn out. You never know if he has a gun or a knife or fuck. Or
I go darker than
what
that.
If you kill him? What if you kill him?
I go darker than that. Fuck him. Just beat up his kid in front of him.
Oh, Jesus.
I mean, none of
I
that
don't think
happened.
he would let you do that. Then he would really kill you. But the idea is that the best thing to do is to get the fuck out of there. So the freezing and trying to figure out because it's a real decision. If you run over to, but if you get the fuck out of there, then that guy hurts you, and then you feel bad, and you never feel like you got him back.
But growing up in the 80s, I got that all the time. And I built up a thick skin to that, and I was like, I'm going to go to a new black school. I'm going to go to an all-Mexican school, and they're going to make fun of me. They're going to do that.
Right.
They're going to call me Mr. Miyagi. So I pull into the beach parking lot, and my dad had just already deleted it from, I was like, oh, sorry, Dad. And he's like, and I'm like, what the fuck am I apologizing? He's like, whatever. And you know, I'm saying it with my whole chest, Korean. I was feeling very braggadocious and proud, and it like deflates, and I go, parasite got us here, and then a virus sends us our dick shrivel back into our body. And I'm like, oh fuck, dude.
Well, that is a virus too.
Well,
like,
yeah.
that guy is a virus.
Well, look, it's like
that guy caught that from somewhere.
well, it's our leadership.
But it's not
They're
just our
calling us.
leadership, but
They're calling
you're
it the.
a 40-year-old man, and that's who
Well,
you are.
it brought it
Trump
back
is
out.
not gonna. No, that guy probably's always been like that, man.
But it's like people are inspiring, right? If you inspire hate, then people become. If they have that in you, it brings it back out.
So
and
you think by just him saying that it's a Chinese virus,
dude, when he called it Chinese virus, when he called it kung fu and not correcting it, the violence towards
but
Asians.
he didn't call it kung flu. He didn't.
well,
if he did, he didn't say it publicly.
I don't know if he said that, but he like there's all those things showing that he crossed it out, and he still
China.
to this
He says Chinese virus.
Chinese virus.
Right.
A little kid got stabbed at the Sam's Club in Texas, an Asian kid, and violence. And it's Asians don't speak up. We don't ask for help. We fucking store it inside, and then we explode.
So a little kid got stabbed.
Look it up.
No, I believe it. I
right.
believe it.
So-
I just
so-
wanna, just because he was Asian?
Just because he was Asian.
It's because of the Chinese flu comment by Trump.
They did a thing where they measure it. Every time he calls it Chinese virus, the violence towards Asians goes up in this country.
Really?
Yeah, it's fucking crazy.
Oh, he did say it. Oh,
Yeah.
Jesus. That's crazy because remember that lady in the White House was saying, I heard someone in your administration called it the Kung flu.
Right.
And he was like, remember he was like, what?
Yeah.
So he was pretending he didn't know what, but he had already said it. Unless that was after that.
I think this was after that event.
This
but
was after that? So he's like, that's a
I
good
think
name.
so.
The Kung flu. I'm going
I
to
don't
use it.
know. Yeah, he said, and this thing where he was saying is like people call it lots of names. There's lots of names, right? Coronavirus, right? Kung flu, yes. Kung flu, yeah. He said it a bunch of times.
Well, there's been a lot of viruses named after other places like the Spanish flu, which killed a fucking shitload of
But
people.
if someone
I don't
shows
know
you
if
the
it was-
stats and they're like, look,
Yeah.
you choosing the words you want right now is causing violence towards Asian people in this
Right.
country. And he's like, yeah, fuck them,
I don't think he's that insightful, right? I don't think he's thinking about it.
Fuck
like
Trump.
that.
Anyone else that's saying that, right? It's
Right.
like,
No, but I'm saying like that maybe someone needs to say it that way because you saying it that way and I didn't know that there was a stat that showed that violence against Asian people went up every time he said it. Then it makes that, first of all, it has a name, right?
yes.
Coronavirus, COVID-19, it has a name. To call it anything other than that name, it should either be funny or descriptive. Now, if he calls it the Wuhan virus, that's really technically where it's from.
Right.
I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But the problem is actual racism and actual violence. That's the real problem. Now, the other thing is when you're a leader, that's when things get slippery because then you can't just be a regular person. Because if you're a leader, you literally can help other people. Like maybe he doesn't even realize it, but you really can change the way people think and behave. When a really powerful person like him,
Right.
the most powerful in the country, arguably, when he says something that prescribes unity, that promotes the idea of companionship and of friendship and of love and of support and camaraderie, literally can change the way people feel. And also if he says something hateful, it'll change the way people feel. Like we move, whether we like it or not. There's so many of us. There's 300 million in this country plus, and we move to inspirational words or angry words.
That's you, man. That's you. You are an inspiration. Like when you say things like that, people listen. You see how people are. If you want it, we were joking right now, but if you did start a cult, there'd be fucking millions of people signing up tomorrow, and they would listen to you. And if you said this is a fucking fuck these Chinese people, then they'd say we're with Joe.
I
So
don't know. I think most of them would leave me if I said that. They would be smart enough. Kanye fell over and Tupac.
come on, Tupac, stay with us, bro.
This Kanye one does not want to stand up. It's so ironic.
So this is what I need help with.
Okay.
How fast did I answer the phone when you called me the other day? Like
It was like a normal
it's
phone
like the
answering.
first. I
Weren't we texting first?
texting first, but then when you called me, I'm so thirsty that people assume, right? In our workaholic culture, people assume that you must be really busy. I mean, you actually are busy. I'm not busy. I don't have anything going on. Like when someone calls me, I make it a game now. Like here's another thing I don't want to admit to you. Like I pulled up right here. I was sitting outside for an hour. I was sitting in like I was talking to this homeless guy outside for an hour before I pulled in here. And so when someone calls me now, it's cool to let it ring 3 times. I'm like, boom.
I do the same thing. I just answer.
So I don't got anything going on.
Listen,
I know in our culture it's really cool to be like, hey bro, what's project you working on? What are you doing? I'm like, nothing. I'm working on myself. That's what I'm working on.
That's really cool.
Yeah. So I take my dog. I got a rescue from Costa Rica. I love my dog. And I go on walks with my dog now that are so long that my dog looks at me and is like, dude, when the fuck are we going to go back home? And I'm walking and I'm taking in my neighborhood. I'm smelling the petunias. I literally stop to smell the roses. I go, this is my life now. I stop to smell the roses. I walk to this underpass where there's like the entire homeless community. I I give them snacks, clean underwear, water. I just talk to them, and they see me coming. They're like, "Oh, there's that fucking guy that's gonna talk to us for like 6 hours again." And I'm really busy today, Dave. Sam, don't we got like a 1 o'clock brunch? And this is my life now. Not much going on,
But you got to tell me all this just because you answered the phone quick? Like,
no,
that's crazy.
I'm trying to set you. Well, I'm trying to set up how soft I am.
That's not soft.
I'm not hard. I'm not on it.
Okay,
I'm not on it.
Let me pause you for a second.
Okay.
Let me help you out here. First of all, if you just sat there and you weren't busy and just stared at your phone and let it ring 3 times, you'd be a fucking idiot.
But people do that.
People are idiots. You should record them. Everyone should have like a secret video of your friends staring at the phone, deciding whether or not to talk to you or whether or not to let it ring 3 times.
You see the phone ring and you pick it up right away.
Yeah, if I can.
You don't
if I can't
do cool guy like.
No.
I'm
not cool guy. If someone calls me, I'm like, "What's up,
Jamie,
I miss
first
you."
ring?
I
First
tell
ring?
my friends I miss them. I tell them I love them. I'm not cool guy. I answer the phone.
I'm not. I'm thirsty,
Dude,
desperate
I'll
as
answer
fuck
that
guy.
motherfucker. You won't even think it rang.
My game
about
that I
that?
play is that I try to pick it up before it even rings
Good.
once. It's like
Perfect.
you're like oh shit, this fucker's telepathic.
Yeah. Also, if someone butt dials me, I call them right back.
So my point is, I don't got much going on. I'm working on myself. I'm trying to stop and be present and enjoy things, and I'm having a great day.
Beautiful.
This happened last week, by the way. Walking back home, like I've been gone for like 2.5 hour walk. I'm walking back home. Once again, I'm at a red light. Car pulls up. Window comes down, and I'm just sitting there, and I get that feeling that something's about to happen, and the light turns. On the other crossing light turns. It's about to turn red, and he goes, "Hey, hey, hey, hey!" And I look over, and he goes, "Go back to where you come from." What do I got? 7 seconds before, like I got a few seconds. And I go, once again, this is the second incident since the pandemic started. And I go, I got this. I know this one. People used to say that to me. Fuck. And like, there's like, if you, Asian people that are born in America, go back to where you come from. Bellflower, Whittier, Garden Grove, that's. And I froze again. I go, I have this comeback, clap back, whatever. I have that. And I go, Joe will know what to say. He's a comedian. He's on stage with hecklers.
The best thing you'd say to someone like that is stare at him.
But he's gone already.
Who gives a fuck? Let him go.
Like Mad Dog stare
No,
or just
like when it's empty, blank. You're a mirror. Doesn't mean anything. Go back to where you come from. The guy's a moron. Again. Like, why? Why would he yell out at you? You're not in an argument with this person. He's a piece of shit. He sees you on the side of the road and he just yells out at you. Again, guarantee you, that guy was abused. His life sucks.
go back to where you come from.
That's a crazy thing to say to people.
And then it's like, what? My mom's pussy? Your mom's pussy? Like, do I go offensive or do I go
It's all
self-deprecating?
bullshit. Everybody is from somewhere else. This is the place. Unless you're fucking Cherokee. Unless you're a Native American.
So the best comeback for that is just stare down.
Just nothing. Just give him nothing. You want to argue with the guy, then he gets out and beats your ass again.
He threw my whole fucking day off. I went home, I laid down on my bed, and I was like, God damn!
That's what he wanted to do,
And I go, when was the last time I got that? High school. Some Persian kid said, go back to where you come from.
So it's twice since the pandemic, and all from high school on.
Always at red lights. Maybe I should just. Maybe I should just run the red.
Take a lot of right turns.
Maybe I should just roll the windows up and just look straight. And
Bro, there's gonna be shitheads. Look, life is an unfair game. It's
Right.
unfair. It's unfair with your mind. Like the idea that everybody has the same mind is ridiculous. I know my mind is dog shit compared to Elon Musk's. I've talked to him. Everybody has different attributes. Everybody has different environment. Everyone has different family life, genetics, influences, abuse, assaults, different things that have happened to you that have been horrible that you've had to get through. the loss of loved ones, all these different things. They vary so much from person to person. We have a rough idea of what it means if your mom dies when you're 5. We have a rough idea.
Right.
We have a rough idea if it means if you got beat up when you were 13 in front of your girlfriend. We have a rough idea.
Right.
But we don't know it until we experience it. And everybody experiences a different fucking hand of cards. And then here you find yourself, whatever age you are in life, just still battling demons from your childhood and all fucked up from things that have been happening to you, and you've never had a good path. Your fucking brain doesn't work that good. You've never had a thing that you do that makes you feel special, right? When you paint and you get rewarded for that painting and people love it, there's a charge, there's a thing. Some people don't have a thing. They ain't got shit. And that kind of person sees you on the side of them at a red light and says, go back to where you come from. And that gets into your head and it fucks you up. That's what they want to do. They want you to feel what they feel. When someone says something hateful, one of the reasons why it works is because, like, you feel their hate. It's like it comes off of them. Like, you get it on your system. And that's one of the ways, like, men intimidate other men. When men are angry and scream at men and get in their face, what they're doing is they're not just puffing their chest out. They're not just signaling that they're aggressive and violent. They're getting their hate in you. You have to feel it. You feel it like a drug. Like if someone's mad at you, you feel, and it's all about how much tolerance you have to that drug of other people's aggression and anger and resentment and jealousy and all the various toxic emotions that people have. When someone's at you, like I'm sure you've dated crazy women, right? And I don't even have to ask. So there's a moment in time when a crazy girl's yelling at you and they're mad at you and like, Jesus Christ, you're making me crazy. It's getting into me. Like your crazy is on me. It's like, ugh, I gotta get out of here. It's fucking contagious. And like a virus, it can change the way you feel. And if you're in a fucking hive, just like if you're in like just a hot spot of nasty thinking and behavior, you grow up in that. Maybe you have an abusive family. Maybe your dad beats your mom and your mom beats you and you beat your brother and your brother beats your sister. And it's just fucking madness. And then you have neighbors that suck too, and everybody sucks. Man, that's as much of a virus as the flu. It's a mind virus that gets out into the other people that are around you. And you could be real lucky and you could live in an area of mind nature, a peaceful valley with a beautiful mountain and a creek that goes through it. And that's the community that you're in. You got lucky. You grew up in a wonderful community with fantastic parents and great neighbors, and your aunt, your uncle come over, and everybody has good times. And oh, sure, there's a little bit of hardship here and there, but for the most part, people love each other. It's not fair.
Right.
It's not fair. When that guy yells out at you like that, man, it's hard to internalize all this in the moment because you are feeling his hate.
Well, I'll tell you what happens. I become jealous of comedians because when I'm at a comedy show and I see hecklers and I'm like, that guy was so quick with that comeback.
Yeah, but let me tell you something. I won't do that in real life.
Oh.
I don't do that in real life.
Really?
It's no.
Some guy cuts you off. You don't have a fast one ready?
No.
But you know what? So I reflect on it when I go home and I go, what did I say the last time this happened? And then I start laughing because it was high school. A guy said, hey, why don't you go back to, we got in an argument. He goes, hey, why don't you just go back to where you come from? I go home. I'm like, oh, fuck.
But it's a learned thing.
Years went by. Years went by. The guy was a senior in high school. And I said, I got it. Complete. Revenge is the best dish served colder, all that. Like, not for comedy. I see him in class, and I get my balls up, and I go, I got it. Completely out of context. 4 years later, right? Your mom's pussy. And the guy's like, what the fuck? That's where I come from. And I just walked away, and I go, that landed so flat. Like that.
Not really, though. Because think about it. Right now, we're laughing. Like, it's a slow burn.
A joke delivered 4 years later?
Even worse. A joke delivered 4 years later and talked about 15 years later. See, now it's effective. It's just a real slow bomb. It worked.
Whenever I see stuff like that, I go, because I grew up with it. If you know when you're in high school and people go, hey, pick a superpower, invisibility or flight.
Right.
I'm already invisible. Like being an Asian And growing up in the communities that I grew up with, I was invisible. Like, I don't even have a voice. Like, you might find this hard to believe, but I never talked growing up. I was the kid in the corner, and like girls would form groups and talk about which guy they want to fuck, and I wouldn't even be. They're like, Dave's sitting right there, and they're like, yeah, he's not even on the fucking roster. And I'm like, so I go, wait, is this racist? Yeah, but what has it? How can I turn this around? What it did for me, the Asian superpower is, if you're not seen and you're not heard and we're seen as non-threatening, I can go anywhere. I can go anywhere and people open up to me. I've been to the Congo. I've been to third world countries. I've been to every fucking state in America. I might be the most American person. Like, I've been to every fucking state. I've hitchhiked from the time I was 15 to every fucking state, every country. And I've talked, and because, would a black guy be able to do that? Would a white guy be able to do that? When people see, oh, that guy's Chinese, he's like Jackie Chan, or he's whatever they think, they don't think that I'm gonna do anything or say anything or I'm gonna pose any threat. So they just open up and they say the most, I don't know, like when I started hitchhiking, people said no one's gonna pick you up, right? Like 60s, 70s, everyone hitchhiked, and then something weird happened in the 80s where like you're gonna get raped, kidnapped, murdered, But I go, I don't think so. I think if I put my thumb out and ask for help, someone's gonna give it to me. And with that, I got to see the world for free. I got to go everywhere. And much like what happened was, I would sit shotgun and I'm getting these free rides, and two things would happen. Either the driver has a long drive and they want someone to talk to, or they want me to talk to them. And something would happen, and like, I'm in the car right now with a complete stranger. Anything could happen. And the first hour is always small talk. How long you been on the road? What would you do? It's all that kind of stuff. Something switches when they know the ride's about, like I'm about to get out or whatever. I'm never going to see this guy again. I'm never going to see this guy again. So now we've been talking about news, sports, and weather for an hour. Last 10 minutes, I fucked my sister when I was 12.
Whoa.
Everything comes out. So I've heard, think about how many rides I've hitchhiked.
How old was he? He was 12. How old was his sister?
I don't know. It was 8. I mean, everything. Drugs, incest. I killed somebody. Like murder.
A guy told you?
Murder confessions.
Really?
I've heard the most insane.
Hold one at a time. Murder confession.
I don't know if I should retell it here.
You definitely should be.
A guy confessed to me that he was thinking of raping me when I stayed at his house.
Oh, Jesus. You stayed at his house? You didn't just hitchhike, you hitch-housed?
I was in the deep south. I was in the deep south. It was like I was trying to hitchhike from LA to New York City. I was with my friend Brian. Same thing. No one's going to pick up two fucking dudes. And John Wayne picks us up, cowboy guy. 10-gallon hat, Damn, you boys look, hot out there. Get in the car. And he's telling us about shrimp po' boys, and he works on a offshore oil rig, and it's 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off, and it's just 2 weeks off right now. So he's like, "Where are you guys headed?" And we're like, "We're just trying to get to New York." New York? What you want to go there for? A bunch of queers out there. I don't know. We want to check it out. You guys want to stay at my house tonight? Like, this guy looks like grandpa. Just cowboy boots, cowboy hat, just big gut. Like, he's a dude.
Right.
Yeah, I'm young. I'm 17 or 18 at this time. We get to his house in this is what I'm talking about. Tiny town in Louisiana. Deep South.
Okay.
Like, we get in his house, Die Hard movie collection, Rambo movie collection, shotguns, and
lube.
Just a dude, just a man's man. And he has in his part-time job is an anesthesiologist. That
part-time anesthesiologist.
Part-time and then part-time offshore oil rig. And I'm, this is summertime, deep south, covered with like grease and mosquitoes, living outside on the road, hitchhiking. He's like, "You guys want to take a shower?" I'm like, "Fuck yeah." I'm the first one in the shower. And And then I come out, I got the towel wrapped on. He made us like a frozen pizza or something. And there's a protest on the television. It's this is 1993 or 94. There's a protest of something with gay people in San Francisco, and they're all protesting. And he's watching it. He's like, I'm like, what? He's like, I'm queer. You never see me out there protesting. And I'm like, oh shit. And then my friend Brian, who's covered in grease and dirt, he hasn't showered yet. And I'm like, oh shit. And I started getting my clothes on. And it's one thing to be gay, and then it's one thing to be picked up by like a
big gay guy with a cowboy hat who takes you to his house.
So here's the thing. I don't want to discourage people from hitchhiking. This is one weird incident that's happened in like 15 years of hitchhiking. So he's like, hey Brian, it's your turn. Why don't you take a shower? No, I'm okay. I'm all right. You're filthy. Why don't you get in there and take a shower? He's like, no, I'm all right. I'm okay. And I go, oh, fuck. What do we do? I do a little powwow in the corner. He's like, he's old. We can take him if he tries anything. We're tired. We were fucking so tired. We're like, he looks like he was like falling asleep on his couch. And he goes, he's going to go to sleep soon. Let's just fucking stay the night. It's fucking air conditioned in here. And then let's leave first thing in the morning before he wakes up. I'm like, okay, fuck it. Let's just do it. All right, boys, I'm going to turn in. I'm like, yes. So we take the couch, and I go, let's sleep in a formation, and let's take turns. We should have just left. You go, you stay up for an hour, and then wake me up. I'll stay up for an hour. And then we'll leave crack of dawn. I had a pocket knife, so I slept like this. I took the knife and I put the thing like this, and I slept like that, and I stayed up for the first hour, and I see him walking around his room. The lights are on. And I'm like, this guy's not going to sleep. Midnight, 1 a.m. I'm like, what the fuck? Why won't this guy go to sleep?
Putting his masks on.
So I nudge Brian. I go, hey, it's your turn. I'm going to fucking pass out. He's out cold. I'm like, fuck, dude. Fuck, man. I'm too tired. And I go, okay, I'm just going to stay up the whole night. So I'm up. I'm like, guys are closing, bringing back up again, gripping the knife. And then sometime around 5:30 in the morning or something, my eyes are closed, but when you feel someone.
Mm-hmm.
So he comes out of his room, and he's standing there. And I could see, and then I go, oh shit. And then I grip the knife, and I go, this is it. This is it. It's going to happen right now. And he just leaves. He goes out the door. And I go, oh, fuck. And then I wake up Brian. I go, Brian, let's get the fuck out of here. He's like, what's going on? He's like, dude, he just left. He's like, okay, I'm going to take a shower then. I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, if he went to the store or something, he's not going to
get some duct
tape.
tape.
He's not going to be back for, I'll jump in and jump. I go, dude, let's just go right now. I don't know if he was jerking off or what. I had my eyes closed, but he was standing right there. And he's like, I'll be quick. So he runs in, takes a fast shower. We get our clothes on. And just as we're walking out, he's like, hey, he pulls in. You guys leaving without saying bye? I just went to the market to get some eggs for breakfast. And I'm like, oh, fuck, dude. So I'm like, I have the knife in my hand the whole time. I go, it's that thing where I'm a people pleaser. I'll even put my own life at risk to, this guy went to the store and got eggs for me, yeah, sure, we'll have some eggs. So we go in, and the guy starts talking about his wife and how he works on this offshore oil rig with a younger dude. It's just two guys running this whole oil rig. And the other guy just talks about how much he hates gay people the whole time, not knowing that this guy is.
Wow.
And then he just like all the other times I've been picked up, he starts opening up about how he was married, he has a bunch of children, and then he figured out he was gay. And then he's just like, I could see it. He knows we're on our way out. He's never going to see us. Let's just fucking let it on. You boys look so cute on the side of the road there last night. And it's like, I was so I'm so lonely. I don't get to, you don't know what it's like to be a queer guy in the deep South. And man, when I came out this morning and I saw you guys sleeping together, you guys on the couch, you look so beautiful and perfect. And I'm like, oh my fucking God, dude. And then he says, I thought about just, you know, if you guys wouldn't mind if I just touched you a little bit. And I'm like, what the fuck? And, you know, we've once again, I froze. I'm like, oh yeah, cool. Yeah, so and so I said, yeah, we're gonna leave now. So we just fucking booked it. And then all of his neighbors were black. Like he lived like in a black neighborhood, and like the houses are on stilts because of the swampland and whatever. And I don't know if he's done this before, but as we ran out, like I heard like the kids laughing, and they're like, "Oh, Tom, they're trying to do it again," and I'm like, "Oh fuck, like this isn't the first time." Like,
Oh, of course.
and look,
Probably
man,
drives
this
around
is
looking for hitchhikers.
I've hitchhiked all over the world,
And that was the only time.
right? And
Yeah.
and so I highly recommend it. But yeah, what I was saying about being invisible is a lot of times people will do this or say, "Kate, go back to where you come from," because they're like, "This fucker's not going to do anything."
Mm-hmm.
And that's just not the way the world works. You know, like someone was explaining to me the other day that no one ever wins a war. I go, what are you talking about? We come in, we blow shit up, and then we take the... It's like, if you look at Germany and Japan, right? It's two countries that are very small. You look at a globe and you look at how small they are. These are two countries that are very tiny, that have tried to dominate every country around them. And Japan has Germany starts every world war, right? And so you're like, oh, but we won those wars. But we drive their cars now. We drive Lexus. They won in the end. And then you think of the soldiers that come home, the PTSD, the drug addiction, the homelessness. It's like, look at our country now. It's like, did we win? Like you won, like on the charts. You look at the numbers. We took this town. We did this. We did that. And when you fuck with people, when you hurt someone, it stays with them forever. Like it stays with them for a long time, unless you have tools and different things to like work through those things, which I've been working on a lot. But yeah, being, oh fuck, that's sort of racist that no one really thinks of me as a threat. How can I turn that into an advantage? I'm gonna travel the entire world. I'm gonna train hop. I'm gonna hitchhike. Vice gave me like one of the first Vice shows was Thumbs Up. Gavin McInnes, Shane Smith, those guys. I've been writing and drawing.
That's how I found out about you.
Really?
Yeah, I found out about you from two places. One from Bourdain, but two from a video that I watched of you going to the Congo looking for a dinosaur. that was the first thing I ever saw of you. I think that's like, then I talked to Bourdain about you, and he was like, you got to talk to this guy. You got to meet him. And when I saw your show, I was like, look at this dude. This is crazy. He's looking for a fucking brontosaurus in the middle of the Congo.
In 1994, I was living in Israel in a farm called Ramat HaKovesh, and it was a kibbutz. And to live on the kibbutz, you have to work. And I was the illegal immigrant there, so I have no money. So I'm making enough working on the farm just to live on the farm. And at this point, I'm 18 years old. I've been hitchhiking since I was 15, and I've seen the whole world. I've hitchhiked through Europe. I've hitchhiked through the U.S. back and forth. And I'm bored. This is I'm like, what, you go to the Eiffel Tower, you take that same, like, this,
Right.
What haven't we done yet? It's all mapped out. We've been to everywhere. We've seen everything. We've done everything. I have a heart of an explorer. I want to find new things, you know? And so I'm living on this kibbutz. Most of the other people there are from Australia and South Africa. And what I love about them is they're so racist that they don't even know they're racist. Like, I'm the only Asian guy there, and they're like, Nintendo, Sega Genesis. Like, I'm like, I got a name. And they're like, no, your name's Nintendo. I'm like, okay. And so I'm working illegally in a casino, illegally at a wedding catering place, and then working on this farm. So I have 3 jobs. I'm making, like, under the table. And there's a library on the farm of books that have been left behind by past travelers. And, of course, there's an old... from the 70s or 80s, a National Geographic catalog. And I start reading about Mokele Membe. I don't know if that's how you say it, but it's scientists, National Geographic people have spotted this fucking brontosaur-like thing in the Congo, and it's still there, and the Congo is still, it's the heart of darkness. I gotta fucking find this thing. I gotta go there. Like I was.
How old were you at the time?
I was
when
18.
You decided you were going to go there?
I was like, I have to go there.
How old were you when you went? Did the
18
Vice
years
show?
old.
That
Oh,
was
no. And then Vice. I'll bring it back to how that turned into Vice. But so I get on a plane. Tons of lying and manipulating to get the visa because it wasn't open to tourism. It was only open to business. And so I make up this story that I'm a bodyguard to a toothpaste executive, and I work day and night to get a ticket to the Congo. And there's no tickets. It's this airline Aeroflot. And I'm in Israel, which is close to Africa, but because it's this Russian airline, I get on this flight. It goes to Moscow, and then Malta, and then like 6 other African countries, and then it lands in Brazzaville.
how long?
Like 3 days, almost and like a shaky airplane, you know, and you know, everyone in there is the ones that got to get out, right? So when they're coming back, they're bringing chickens and goats and all kinds of shit on the plane, and
Wow.
it smells like shit. And I don't know. This is pre-internet, right? I don't have any information on the Congo except for I heard that there's a dinosaur there.
What year?
94. 94, 95. I lost track of time, but it was right after high school, so 18,
So
19.
you don't have a cell phone either. Then.
No cell phone, nothing. And the second I get off the plane, it smells horrible because there's just burning trash everywhere, and it's hot, and it's oppressive. And I go, what the fuck am I doing here? Like, why am I here? And everyone there asks me, what are you doing here? They don't speak English. They speak French. I didn't know that. They're in the middle of a civil war. I think the 2 factions were called the Ninjas and the Cobras, like little kids shooting at night. Every 3rd bullet is like a tracer bullet, so it looks like fireworks. I go, what is that? And they're like, oh, they're just shooting into the air. First breakout of Ebola, malaria, and people go, why did you do that? It's not normal behavior. And I go, the LA riots happened in 1992. I watched normal civilization, normal civilized manners. You know, this is how people are. You go to a store. I saw that crumble overnight. In one night, it went from, fuck you, everything, let's burn down, let's rob, pillage, steal, everything. I go, oh, it could happen that fast? And once again, that same kind of, oh, I think I'm accepted in this country. I think people like me, for me. And it's like, no, we don't want you. Get the fuck, go back to where you come from. So I think, you know, and I could go on and on about all the traumas I've experienced in my life, but I hurt people. I was in a lot of pain. I was like, I didn't like Korean people. I didn't like myself. I'd experienced a lot of abuse from black people. And I just wanted to, I didn't know anything. There was no internet. I felt like an alien. I'm like, I don't belong anywhere. So I would go, everyone goes, don't go to Bosnia. Don't go to the Congo. Don't go to the Gaza Strip. And I'm going to go every fucking place. My life has been very reactionary, right? My life has been like, you don't tell me what to do. Mm-hmm. You don't tell me how to podcast. I'm going to stick a butt plug in my, you know,
right.
I'm going to do what, you know, so I'm in the Congo and it's in a full-blown war. There's people being, and everyone's like, who are you?
Oh my God.
Who is this blonde Asian here? Like I had my hair dyed then too. And so I could go and tell a million stories about the Congo, but at some point.
But why you were looking for this brontosaurus for real, or you just wanted to go to the Congo as well?
I know the kids like to say 100%. I've heard you say it too.
Yeah.
Why not 99% just to leave 1% for down? 99% I was there for the dinosaur. Like I was so young and dumb and stupid and ignorant where I truly thought I was going to find it. Like I didn't know enough about like everything made sense to me. 'Cause anyone listening to this right now, we're talking about a story from 20 years ago, right?
Right.
I was a stupid kid. I believed in Santa Claus very late. You know, like I was a bedwetter. I'm fucked up, man. So when I finally did get to the jungle, I got out of Brazzaville. I got to this jungle area called Hueso. then I believed, because the spiders are this big and the frogs are this big, and
How big are the frogs?
just everything looks insane. The snakes, they got snakes out here this big. Like, it was like, okay, now I believe. Like, every year, scientists were finding a new species of something that they thought was gone, and I'm like, okay, and then I meet the pygmies,
Whoa.
and that was, fuck, I don't know what version of the story I should tell because it could get so dark. I met a German guy named, fuck, I shouldn't say his name. I met a German guy there who was the same age as me, and this is in the city. And then he could tell that I was lost. I didn't know who this guy was. He was being groomed to be like the next big politician in Frankfurt or something.
Right.
And so I didn't get this until later. But he was here as his like sex vacation to fuck as many he liked black women. So he's gonna fuck as many. Curb your language, Dave. To have as many intimate relations with women as possible. Is that better?
No. The other way
I'm trying to be better for myself. That's what I'm trying to do.
The other way was better. You were explaining what it was. It's not a bad thing.
That's what he was doing. So I figure
get
out.
it.
So he sees me as another young
It's not
guy.
a bad thing to explain things accurately, you know?
You could use other words though.
Yeah,
I
but
think.
that's what it is, right?
It is what it is. But I
I
can
get it.
I can I can turn people off when I use that language. I want.
Who are these people?
Um.
People that don't like you?
No, they're people
They want Dave, no swear Dave. I came here for G-rated Dave, and I want my money
I'm not trying to
back.
be G-rated. I'm just trying to
PG-13 Dave. That's what I was signing up for. Occasionally, the word shit. PG-13, they have like rules, right? You get like 2 shits.
99%. Okay, so I'm with.
You thought there was a real dinosaur in there, and when you got there and you saw the big frogs and the big snakes,
I'm
you're
like,
maybe it is.
Yeah, maybe it is. And what happens is we go to the last spotting of it, right? And then I meet.
Is there any evidence at all? Like
everyone I talk to? Oh yeah, we seen it. Like there's no like no, that's crazy. Every fucking person I meet is like, oh yeah, it's in the last. So
is it one of those things where realistically there's not a whole lot of people looking for it anyway?
No, but there are scientists that go out there, and in the meantime, I've never seen anyone murdered before until I got here, right? I've been through the LA riots. I've seen things broken and burned down and guns pointed, but I've never seen anyone hung. I've never seen anyone stoned to death, and it's absolute chaos. I'm seeing people murdered. I'm scared for my life. I got attacked one time. So I go, I need to find it. Now I have to find this dinosaur. And I also know that there's a chance that I might never go home again. So I write a letter to my parents. They don't know where I am. They think I'm in Israel on this farm. Like, I didn't tell anybody. So I wrote my parents this long letter of, I love you guys. I'm about to embark on a journey to find a dinosaur in the jungle. And I sent it at the airport before I got on the plane to the jungle. I have no money. I have only one change of clothes. I have fucking blonde hair. And I go into the jungle, and we get lost immediately. I'm a fucking city boy. What the hell do I know about the jungle? What do I know about the jungle?
Where were you? Did you have any direction?
Nothing. I just knew what, you know what?
So
When I landed
crazy.
in the jungle, there was a guy that I think I want to say his name is Chris, that was a Peace Corps guy. And he was there to help build welds in this Bantu village. And he said, the place what you guys are looking for, he's like, you're not going to find a dime. You know, he was like the reasonable one.
Mm-hmm.
And I go, how do I know if you don't try? You know, I still believed. I still wanted to believe. I was willing to risk my life for it. So I haven't fucking told this story in so long. So we get to the jungle and we start walking. There's a minor trail and then it disappears. It's just gone. And I'm like, we're fucking lost in the jungle. We're lost in the jungle. So I'm with this guy that what we told people, he was here to fuck as many women as possible, but we went with the story of he is the toothpaste executive and I'm his bodyguard. That's a fake bullshit story.
Right.
As we're lost in the jungle, he starts to think that story is real. Hey, go fetch me a pineapple. I go, dude, I'm not your, he's like, you're not a real executive, bro. Like, I'm not going to get, and he starts like telling me like, I'm like, hey, you know that was a fake story, right? Like, he's like, and there's no one around. So we get lost for days, and he starts to really be like humiliating towards me and right on my nerves. And we had rations.